Chapter 499. At this time, Yin-ju walked out and sprinkled 6 light spots with a wave of his hand. The leaders of the 6 major forces all shot out like lightning, grabbing a light spot in the nothingness. Xian Jingju spread out his hands. Xianan stretched out his head and saw a word C. Draw lots and take half of the 12 heavenly stems. A versus F, B versus E, and C versus D. Xianan heard what Yin-ju said, and his eyes widened slightly. He whispered, "Dad, are we the last round in the first round?" Xian Jingju nodded and said nothing. Wow! When Xianan was about to speak again, there was a sudden exclamation in the field, which attracted him to look up. 2 silhouettes suddenly appeared on the originally empty arena. One of them had white hair and looked like an old man, while the other was an honest-looking man with a slender figure. He looked like a simple-minded person. Su Li glanced at them. She didn't know any of them, so she waved the vicious female practitioner. The vicious female practitioner was in Huashan realm, and she was well informed. After being affected by Su Li's soul tactics, she said what she said without reservation. She pointed to an old woman in ragged flowery clothes on the arena and said in a stern voice, "The old woman is Wu Yunjiao, a descendant of human and witch. She is very good at poisonous charm and is known as soul-breaking grandma. She hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. Many people thought she was dead, but she is still alive. As for the big man in indigo, I am unfamiliar with him and have never seen him before." As the vicious female practitioner said, Tang Li was dumbfounded. The original owner called her master. He knew his master's temperament very well. She liked to abuse slaves most. How could she calmly recognize others as her master? This elder sister had actually controlled her without anyone knowing. Tang Li fell into horror, and for a while, he couldn't hear the noise around him. Su Li let him be in a daze and didn't wake him up. After listening to the vicious female practitioner, she nodded slightly and looked back at the field. The light was flowing in her eyes. In the past few days, she learned a little bit about the top sects in Zholi region. Just now, she saw that the big man in indigo came out from the Shuajian cult, and Wu Yunjiao came out from the Shejian sect. These 2 sects were originally the first sect in Zholi region. After the division, the Tianyin tribe came later and dominated Zholi region for many years. In this gulling gambling battle, although the 4 sects fought for themselves, the real goal was only the Tianyin tribe. It was also a rare cooperation in many years. Su Li took a meaningful look at the direction of Jiguang sect. The 6 forces fought against each other in pairs, and there were no free rounds. Even if the Jiguang sect was lucky enough to be ranked in the 3rd round, someone must play. In the seats, "Dad, do we really want to give up?" Xianan looked at the 2 sides confronting each other in the field, and the atmosphere gradually became cold. His eyes showed unwillingness, and he secretly transmitted the sound. Xian Jingzhou's face didn't change, and he secretly responded, "We have been looking for it for several years, but we have found nothing. Do you want me to change one on the spot?" He pinned, he said, and said, he said, he was, he. If she can do it, it will be okay. When Xian Jingju saw that his son was still talking about such naive words, he raised his eyebrows. But when he saw Xianan's anxious look for the sect, he couldn't help but soften. He said, "It has come to this. You don't have to worry too much. If she can really help our sect win the gambling battle, I will give her whatever she wants." Xianan was shocked when he heard the words. He was not sure if the senior sister apprentice would come, but the memory of that month would not be fake. It was just a battle between Huashan realm. If the senior sister apprentice came, she could kill it with her bare hands. Xian Jingju didn't know that his son had so much confidence in the so-called senior sister apprentice. He wanted to give up directly, but he didn't say it in the end. Although he knew that there was not much hope, Xianan's words still made him think about it. "Well, I will give her a chance. Even if it doesn't work," Xian Jingzhou's eyes flickered. He had arranged everything secretly. No matter who got the sound acquaintance, the Linli building would get it. "Lord Xian, you are so excited. Why are you so excited?" Suddenly, a voice with a faint smile came into Xian Jingzhou's ears. Xian Jingju was slightly shocked. He turned his head to look at the seat of the Tianyin tribe unhurriedly, but he saw a handsome young man looking at him calmly. He sat on the seat and gently swayed the paper fan in his hand. It seemed that he was giving advice. Yi Wenying, the new holy boy. Why does this person also have that kind of smell? He can see through my soul fluctuation. He shouldn't. He was surprised in his heart, but he snorted coldly on the surface and turned his head away. The holy boy doesn't need to worry about the affairs of our small sect. Yi Wenying was not annoyed at all. He waved the folding fan in his hand and said in a gentle voice like a gentleman, "Lord Xian, you are an elder. Since you don't want to say it, I am rude. Please don't blame me." Seeing his hypocritical appearance, Xian Jingju only felt disgusted in his heart. He sneered and said, "How can I not know what kind of person you are? Don't act like this to disgust me. Do you really think that you can become the great holy boy if you imitate a trace of the genuine essence of the great holy boy, Yimo?" Hearing this, the smile on Yi Wenying's face quickly disappeared, and it was ugly and distorted. He just relied on the Tianyin tribe to intimidate others. Who would have thought that Xian Jingju didn't give him any face at all, which put him in an awkward situation. After thinking about it, he still didn't want to offend the lord of a sect. He could only bite the bullet and snort coldly. Then he turned his head and stopped looking at him. This scene was seen by many people, and it immediately made many bold people laugh. Yi Wenying's face was even more unsightly. The great holy boy, Yimo, Su Li was not deaf, so she heard the dialogue between the two clearly. But Yimo, wasn't he in Zhozhou region? Could it be that he came back during the days when she was out? It turns out that the Yi family is the Tianyin tribe. Thinking of this, Su Li thought of the two pneumas she sensed 2 days ago. Her face suddenly changed slightly, and then became gloomy. "Sister, look, the fight has started on the stage." Tang Li grabbed Su Li's sleeve excitedly, pulling her back from her thoughts. Everyone in the field focused on the arena. "Ha ha 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 ha, what old lady breaking soul? Is that all you have?" The man in indigo clothes let out a laugh, and 3 turtle-like poisonous insects rose from his palm and merged into his body. His originally strong body swelled rapidly, and his blue veins were exposed. He was full of explosive power. Without any movement, the cyclone under his feet suddenly reverberated, and he disappeared in place. The white-haired old woman's face changed slightly. She had no time to use the poisonous insect skill and dodged. The next moment, boom, a large cobweb-like pit appeared on the hard arena surface. Countless gravel splashed and dust flew. The 5 major sects couldn't help but be awestruck. This is the lapis lazuli that can resist the peak of Huashan realm. It was cracked. Many people were speechless. The lord of Yinquan sect narrowed his eyes and said gloomily, 3 poisonous insects of rank 6 will add at least 1,000 kilograms of strength to the physical body. No wonder the old lady breaking soul can't resist it. This person should be the descendant of the Wang family who practiced poisonous insect, but he only inherited the poisonous insect of strength, so he is not a threat. As soon as the words came out, everyone was enlightened and talked about it. The man in indigo clothes has an extremely rare poisonous insect of strength in his hand. No wonder, Xian was overwhelmed with emotions when he saw it. He touched his chest, where a rank 4 ultimate power poisonous insect was sleeping. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his expression became strange. Since the poisonous insect of strength was owned by the Wang family, did he and senior sister apprentice Su dig the ancestral grave of the Wang family? Boom! The man in indigo clothes punched the ground and straightened up. His eyes were still bright, and he didn't look tired at all. "Old lady, can't you do anything except hide?" Swish. The white-haired old woman appeared with a gloomy face, and her hoarse voice echoed in the nothingness. "My poisonous insect of charm is completely ineffective, but you have the poisonous insect of say." The man in indigo clothes grinned with cold white teeth and laughed loudly. "I'm Wangian, the descendant of the Wang family who practiced poisonous insect. My ancestors have countless rare poisonous insects. Is it strange that I have the poisonous insect of sage?" Speaking of this, his tone changed, and he looked at the powerful figures of the sect with scorching eyes around him. However, I have refined the poisonous insect of sage into my life, and life and death are inseparable. I hope that seniors will show mercy, but if you just want to exchange some seeds of sage for your own cultivation, I can't ask for more." The white-haired old woman snorted coldly, flicked her sleeves and stepped down from the arena. I admit defeat. Her poisonous insect cultivation system was based on the poisonous insect bone. Even the poisonous insect bone was completely restrained. It was impossible for her to defeat Wang Yan, so it was better to give up and find a breakthrough from others. Hearing this, Wang Yan smiled and held his fist to the splitting soul grandma. His purpose of coming out had been achieved, so he didn't need to continue. Seeing this, the headmaster of the Zhejian sect looked gloomy, and he was angry and anxious. Where does this person come from? The splitting soul grandma has no power to fight back. The headmaster of the Shueshan sect laughed heartily. It was also a coincidence that they could find the man in indigo clothes. They had to make every possible effort. Who would have thought that this person could bring them such a surprise? The Wang family still has a clan in the mountains of the Zhouli region. This person has extraordinary means. He should be extraordinary. Maybe he is the young lord of the bereaved clan. We shouldn't offend him. Xian Jingju calculated in his mind, and soon came to a conclusion. He transmitted the sound to Xian and nodded secretly, and glanced at the seats in the field from time to time. In the second game, Gui Bian of the Tianyin tribe will fight against Wu Yunjiao of the Zhejian sect. Yin Ju announced. Wu Yunjiao, who was originally depressed, suddenly brightened her eyes. She rose into the air and landed on the platform. For the first time, Wang Yan's poisonous insect of sage restrained the poisonous insect bone. She couldn't help it. For the second time, she would not continue to be unlucky. I have practiced hard for 500 years. This time, I must let the world see how powerful I am. She narrowed her old eyes, and the pink skull in her claw-like palm rotated rapidly. The mist rose and wrapped her whole body in it. When the mist dissipated, it was no longer the white-haired old woman standing in the same place, but a peerless beauty with charming eyes. Her clothes were only thin pieces of cloth, and the charming parts were looming in the cover. Her face was like the most perfect artwork in the world. Every frown and smile was charming to all living beings. She was dazzling. All of the cultivators present were dumbfounded. There were even some whose cultivation and status weren't high enough. Their eyes were filled with infatuation and they revealed ugly expressions. On the other side of the arena, the white-browed practitioner stepped on the edge of the arena with a smile on his face. Chapter 500. It's him. Yin Yutian, who was sitting upright in his own seat, suddenly changed his expression. He transmitted his voice. "Father, this person is very likely to be the one who committed murder in the Chamber of Commerce that day. He even robbed a customer of a huge amount of celestial crystals." As he said that, Yin Ju's face did not change at all, and he only glanced in the direction of the Tianyin tribe. "Father." Yin Yutian suddenly became anxious. That distinguished guest must not be offended. I saw her with my own eyes. Well, I'll deal with it after the gulling gambling battle. There is no need to offend the Tianyin tribe at this time. Don't be too enthusiastic. Keep calm all the time. That's what you did in your identity at that time. Yin Ju's voice transmission overshadowed Yin Yutian's anxiety, and a trace of displeasure flashed between his eyebrows. Yin Yutian knew that his father was unhappy and sighed in his heart. He knew his father's idea. It was unnecessary for the practitioner with white eyebrows to offend the local bully for a female casual practitioner since he was connected with the Tianyin tribe. However, his father didn't see the situation that the woman easily played Yin Jiaojiao in the palm of her hand. With such weird means and insight that could see through him at a glance, she must be an extraordinary person. However, it was difficult for him to talk about practicing the divine skill, so he could only keep silent and wait for the end of the gulling gambling battle to find an opportunity. But if I didn't immediately seek justice for that senior, the effect of gaining a good impression would still be lacking. Helplessness flashed in Yin Yutian's eyes. He suppressed the disappointment in his heart and continued to look at the field. "Come here, Langjun." Wu Yunjiao twisted her waist and faced Gui Bian. Her eyes were full of pink gas. Gui Bian walked to Wu Yunjiao blankly and hugged her soft body. He looked intoxicated, as if he was really bewitched by Wu Yunjiao. Seeing this, Wu Yunjiao's charming eyes flashed with killing intent, but on the surface, she exuded a more and more ecstatic atmosphere. Her slender snow-white arms wrapped around Gui Bian's neck, her red lips moved, and her eyes were full of charm. His hands were behind his back. Suddenly, sharp green nails grew out from his 10 fingers, glowing with a cold light. They fiercely stabbed at the heart vein behind Gui Bian, as if they would penetrate Gui Bian's body in the next moment. Cries of surprise rang out from the crowd. Wu Yunjiao's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. She wanted everyone to remember that she, Wu Yunjiao, was not old. She was still the man of broken soul. Someone is going to die. Tang Li stared at the scene. Su Li nodded calmly. She looked at Wu Yunjiao and whispered, "Someone is going to die indeed." At this critical moment, Wu Yunjiao's complexion suddenly changed. Her whole body froze on the spot. Her sharp, dark green nails stopped on the surface of her skin. She could no longer move. The dullness on Gui Bian's face disappeared. He took a few steps back and left Wu Yunjiao's arms. He looked up and down at Wu Yunjiao, who was frozen in place and her eyes lost. He smiled and said in a teasing tone as when he came on the stage, "Broken soul old witch, it seems that your Jiyu charm is not good enough. If you don't want to kill me, maybe I will give you some advice." Unfortunately, as he spoke, his finger gently touched the space between Wu Yunjiao's eyebrows. Wu Yunjiao's absent-minded face suddenly turned into horror, and then she let out an inhuman scream. She pinched her heart veins with both hands and exerted force. Poochie. Blood sprayed all over Wu Yunjiao's face, but Wu Yunjiao didn't know it. Her face was distorted, as if she had defeated an enemy. She widened her eyes and laughed wildly. After laughing for a moment, she showed a worried look again. With a ferocious look, she grabbed the space between her eyebrows with both hands, opened the head by force, pulled out the primordial spirit, and crushed it. Patter, the corpse fell on the arena, and the blood quickly dyed the ground red along the gap. The whole venue fell into silence. Many people with low cultivation saw such a bloody scene for the first time. Their pupils shrank, and even their breathing slowed down subconsciously, for fear of breaking the silence at the moment. Only Gui Bian, who stood alone next to the corpse, still smiled. His white clothes were not stained with a drop of blood. He sighed and repeated, "What a pity." At this time, a burst of applause suddenly came from the seats of the Tianyin tribe. Yi Wenying stood up and clapped with a smile, "Ha ha ha ha, Senior Gui is really talented. My Tianyin tribe didn't choose the wrong person." Gui Bian behaved very modestly. He saluted slightly and said in a gentle voice, "You flatter me. I'm not talented enough to deserve such praise from the Tianyin tribe." Yi Wenying was very happy when he heard that, and he smiled more, "Senior Gui, don't worry. As long as you can win, our Tianyin tribe will promise you everything. You can take all the immortal poisonous insect sound acquaintance." As soon as Yi Wenying said that, the other 5 forces frowned. This junior didn't take them seriously. Even Yin Ju, who had always been kind to others, felt uncomfortable for a while. "Then I will thank the holy boy Wenying first." The smile on Gui Bian's face faded a little. He thought that Yi Wenying didn't like him and wanted to kill him with flattery. However, he couldn't show it at the moment. He could only thank Yin Ju superficially and said to Yin Ju, "I'm a little tired after this battle. Can I have a rest?" Yin Ju knew that he wanted to avoid the limelight, so he nodded and said, "Of course." The previous drawing of lots was a rough order. For example, Wu Yunjiao admitted defeat in the first game. It didn't take much effort, so he would arrange it flexibly. Although Gui Bian didn't seem to spend much effort this time, he took action anyway. In order to be fair, he naturally had to replace him. Of course, he did this out of selfishness. He arranged Kang Chang to be the last to test the strength of others, and the odds of winning would be greater. Even if other sects saw this little trick, they wouldn't say much. The 4-peak holy sects were like an insurmountable mountain. Gui Bian quickly retreated. After he disappeared from the arena, the practitioners in the seats below immediately talked about it. Wu Yunjiao practiced in isolation for hundreds of years, and the poisonous charm was promoted to level 5. However, she was instantly countered by this unknown Gui Bayan and cruelly killed. I didn't even see what kind of poisonous charm he used. There are capable people in the cultivation circle. If we don't come to this gulling gambling battle, our knowledge will be outdated. Ye or Tang Li heard the discussion of the crowd, and he couldn't help but envy secretly. When could he become the focus of others' discussion? He really envied him. But at this moment, the voice of the woman beside him suddenly came into his ears. It turns out to be him. Su Li suddenly said softly. Tang Li was suddenly confused and asked in a low voice, "Sister, what's wrong?" Su Li glanced at him, and her red lips curved. "I found a thief and have to leave for a while. You have to sit here obediently and don't walk around. Servant Yi will protect you." Tang Li nodded obediently, and then wondered, "Who is Servant Yi?" "Sister, do you come out with a servant?" Su Li smiled and pointed behind Tang Li. "That's her." Tang Li's face stiffened. When he turned around, he saw the ferocious female cultivator, who had never been nice to him, looking at him with a flattering gaze. She lowered her fat head and said, "Lowly slave, swears to protect young Master Tang with my life. Yutian, don't mention the matter of Gui Bayan again. You can compensate for the loss of that customer." At the seat of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, Yin Ju secretly told with a solemn face. Yin Yutian was stunned. He struggled for a moment, and finally nodded. He was really frightened by Gui Bayan's means. Even Wu Yunjiao died in his hands without knowing why. There was no one in the Huangxing Hall that he couldn't afford to offend. But in the eyes of businessmen, it was not worth it to offend him. The murder last time has not been spread. It is not difficult to deal with it, but I don't know whether the female senior can accept it, and how much is the value of the celestial stone in the universe ring. Yin Yutian rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. At the same time, the voice of his father, Yin Ju, spread from the field. The third round, Yinquan sect versus Jiguang sect. Before the voice died away, the lord of Yinquan sect laughed, "Tut tut tut. Is it finally our turn? Huang Quan, you go." In the seat behind him, a pale and fat young man who didn't look like a living person immediately stood up. He had loose fat on his face and heavy dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept for a few days. His body was as fat as a bucket, and it was all covered in a wide white robe. "Yes, Lord." He saluted stiffly, and then tiptoed. He fell into the arena like flying and landed silently. "I'm Taoist Huang Quan. Please enlighten me." Seeing this, Xian Jingju knew that it was time. He sighed secretly and was about to stand up from his seat and announce his abstention. "Dad." Xian'an's eyes were slightly red. At this time, he had no hope in his heart, and his mind was clear. Although the mysterious senior sister apprentice was very good to him, now he thought it was very likely that she did it casually. How could she deliberately get involved in the muddy water and offend a large number of top sects for him? Just thinking about it, he felt it was impossible. He didn't feel strange at all that his senior sister apprentice didn't come, and he even faintly breathed a sigh of relief. But how could he bear to see his father about to lose face in front of the sects? But at this moment, the young man called Huang Quan suddenly said disdainfully, "What? Is it that there is no one in your Jiguang sect, so you send a little girl in Jindan realm to die?" As soon as this remark came out, everyone in the field showed surprise and whispered. Because in their eyes, there was no one on the arena except Taoist Huang Quan. Xian Jingju was also slightly stunned, and swallowed back the words in his throat. He glanced at the arena to look for the figure, but he didn't find anyone. "Sister, could it be that this Daoist has gone mad?" On the seat, Tang Li habitually pulled Su Li's sleeve as he said, but he didn't pull it. He tilted his body and turned his head in amazement, but he saw that Su Li had already disappeared. "Sister." Tang Li wiped his eyes. If it weren't for the vicious female practitioner still sitting on the rush cushion, he almost thought that he had a dream. Suddenly, he remembered what Taoist Huang Quan said just now, and suddenly looked up at the arena. In front of Taoist Huang Quan, who was originally empty, a slim and beautiful figure condensed like smoke. The heavy soul robe turned into a small black veil that covered her face. Her eyes were like stars, shining with an intoxicating light. Her red lips under the veil opened slightly. "I'm Su Jojo. I come to ask for advice." Chapter 501. The indifferent words came into the ears of all the practitioners, and they were all stunned. Su Jojo, who is she? Yinju stared at Su Li's figure under the stage and frowned. She was another unknown poisonous insect practitioner like Wang Yan. An immortal poisonous insect had attracted all kinds of evil spirits in the poisonous insect practitioner circle. In the seats of Jiguang sect, Xianan's eyes widened, and his whole body trembled as if he had been electrocuted. He suppressed his excitement and transmitted the sound, "Dad. Senior sister apprentice is really here. It's her. Her name is Su Jojo." Xian Jingju didn't hear what his son was saying at the moment. He just stared at the tall figure under the stage, which overlapped with the shadow in his memory. The tone and the action were so similar. The same surname is Su, Jojo. She was born in Jojo region, Xian Jingju muttered in his heart. Although he felt that what he thought at the moment was too absurd, he couldn't help guessing. Was it really her? "Humph. You are playing tricks on me. Let me see if you have the real ability." In the field, Taoist Huang Quan's face darkened when he saw that the spotlight was robbed by Su Li. He snorted and opened his wide robe. A dark red pocket-sized coffin came into everyone's sight. The red color surged in the coffin, as if it was about to ooze blood. "Woo!" The faint cry of a baby echoed in the nothingness. Then Taoist Huang Quan didn't take any action, but the lid of the coffin suddenly burst open. The wooden thorns turned into sharp lights and stabbed at Su Li. Su Li's eyes narrowed slightly. She just tilted her head slightly and dodged all the wooden thorns. Taoist Huang Quan was slightly shocked. Although he said disdainfully just now, he was very vigilant in his heart. He directly used his trump card, but he didn't want to be so easily dodged. "No one can live for a quarter of an hour under my poisonous insect attack." His eyes were gloomy, and his big hands grasped the edge of the coffin. The chilly wind blew out of the coffin in an instant. The white mist evaporated, and the faint cry of the baby suddenly became sharp, which shocked the eardrums of the practitioners present. "Woo! What's that?" All the practitioners' scalps were numb, and they stared at the white mist. Suddenly, an extremely distorted purple baby face emerged from the mist. As soon as it woke up, it opened its blood-red eyes and saw Su Li. It immediately opened its mouth full of sharp teeth and flew to her. At the same time, everyone saw the 7 halos on the baby's head. At that moment, there was a series of sharp inhales. The expressions of the leaders of the Blood Sword sect and Evil Sword sect changed as well. Afterwards, their expressions became unsettled. Who knew what they were thinking? Someone can use the rank 7 Flying Infant Corpse GU of the Yin Spring Sec. Daoist Huang Quan. Xian Jingju finally recognized this voodoo, and his face changed drastically. A rank 7 GU worm was equivalent to the Darching stage. Although the Daoist Huang Quan who used this GU was only at the peak of the soul formation stage, the strength of Flying Soul was definitely comparable to the peak of the Crossing Calamity stage. Could Su Jojo really defeat them? Senior sister. Xianan grasped the railing of the seat tightly. At this moment, he didn't think about winning or losing, but he regretted endlessly. He regretted sending that message, which put his senior sister apprentice in such a crisis. Xianan, you are so selfish. At the same time, when Su Li saw the ghost infant rushing at her ferociously, the corners of her lips under the veil slightly curved. Black Lotus couldn't help laughing. "Gee, little Su Li, you are so lucky. A 10,000-year-old ghost is sent to you. It's a great tonic." Hearing what Black Lotus said, Su Li didn't bother to pay attention to him. She just said with a chuckle, "I don't have a poisonous insect in my hand, and I am worried about how to prove it. I will accept the rank 7 poisonous insect sent to me." After that, she didn't wait for the reaction of the Daoist Huang Quan. With a wave of her hand, a black shadow with an indistinct face appeared behind her and rushed to the ghost infant. Ah! The blood-red eyes of the ghost infant widened in an instant, as if it had seen an extremely horrible thing. It turned over and fled without saying a word, regardless of the order of the Daoist Huang Quan. Puff! The Daoist Huang Quan's face turned pale, and he spat a mouthful of blood on the coffin. However, he didn't take other remedial measures and was completely stunned. Why? Why did the holy infant escape? That was the holy poisonous insect of the Yinquan sect. It was a poisonous corpse that had lived for tens of thousands of years. How could it be afraid of something? The Daoist Huang Quan was stunned, but the ghost infant missed the last chance to escape. Su Li turned 80% of her attention to the evil ghost. Her speed instantly surpassed the screaming and fleeing ghost infant, and she pinched the back of its neck with one hand. The ghost infant was extremely scared. It turned its head 180 degrees and bit the back of the evil ghost's hand with its sharp teeth. Before the ghost energy gushed out, it was burned by the purer ghost energy from the surface of the evil ghost's skin. Its lips were burned away, revealing the green flesh and blood inside. Grabbing the ghost infant, the evil ghost immediately returned. After handing it over to Su Li, it disappeared. All this took a long time to say, but in fact, it happened in an instant. If the cultivation was a little lower, they only saw the ghost infant rushing to Su Li, but it was caught by Su Li in the next moment and couldn't move. Those like Tang Li were even more helpless. He didn't even see the flying infant's attack, and it was over. However, this did not prevent him from admiring Su Li's sister, is so powerful. At this point, there was silence in the field. Even the leaders of Yin Ju and other forces were completely stunned and couldn't recover. Gulp! Someone couldn't help but swallow his saliva gently. It was extremely harsh in the ears of the practitioners. Yin Ju and others immediately recovered, and they looked at Su Li with more fear and awe. Your Excellency, my Yinquan sect is not as good as you in the realm of poisonous insect cultivation. The Lord of Yinquan sect slowly got up and glanced at Xian Jingju. Then he stared at Su Li gloomily and said, however, the flying infant poisonous insect is the inheritance of my sect after all. Even if my Yinquan sect admits defeat, please return the flying infant poisonous insect, so as not to destroy the friendship. Su Li didn't seem to hear the words of the Lord of Yinquan sect at all. She turned her hand and threw the flying infant poisonous insect into the Black Lotus ring. She looked at Yin Ju indifferently. Yin Ju reacted at this time and quickly announced, in the third round, Su Jouzhou of Jiguang sect wins. Seeing this, the Lord of Yinquan sect was extremely angry. How dare you, Your Excellency? Su Li turned her eyes to the seat of Yinquan sect, and her voice was ethereal, interrupting the words of the Lord. Don't be a joke in public. If you say more, I will misunderstand that your sect is weak. Can you tell which is more important, the flying infant poisonous insect or your Yinquan sect? When the Lord of Yinquan sect heard this, his face suddenly changed dramatically. He naturally understood the meaning. This woman was using his Yinquan sect as a threat. This woman's origin was mysterious. How could he deal with her? Thinking of this, he was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. But because of Su Li's strange means just now, he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only scold with hatred, demon girl. You are so vicious that you want to destroy my whole sect at every turn. You are clearly an evil circle. Su Li listened and suddenly chuckled. It seems that the Lord of Yinquan sect still doesn't know that a loose tongue can cause trouble. Before her voice died away, she suddenly reached out and grabbed at Yinquan sect. Taoist Yinquan sect was confused, and then he saw that the white and delicate hand suddenly clenched. Boom! Taoist Yinquan sect exploded in an instant and turned into a cloud of blood mist. You say that I am an evil circle. Then I will show you the evil circle. In the gulling gambling battle, life and death are irrelevant. Su Li said with a smile, and turned her eyes to Yin Ju. She was calm, as if she had pinched an ant to death. First Elder Yin, the flying infant poisonous insect is my trophy. Taoist Yinquan sect is dead. Am I guilty? Yin Ju only felt that the pressure increased greatly, but he had been in the cultivation circle for many years, so he naturally knew how to choose. He immediately nodded and said, what fellow practitioner Su did was reasonable and in line with the rules of the gambling battle. Yinquan sect can't take back the flying infant poisonous insect for any reason. That is your trophy. The lord of Yinquan sect was so angry that his face trembled violently. His eyes were full of anger, and his lips trembled for a long time, but he didn't say a word. Today, his Yinquan sect was disgraced greatly. How could he face the ancestors of all generations when he went back? If I don't get revenge for this humiliation, how can I cultivate? The lord of Yinquan sect took a deep breath, turned back and sat down, and became silent. Yinju frowned and said no more. When he turned his head and saw that Su Li had walked down the arena, he immediately announced the next round of the gambling battle. Yin Yutian was surprised and doubtful. He always felt that Su Jojo's figure was very familiar. He had a guess in his heart, but he was not sure. Both Su Jojo and Gui Bian were ruthless, decisive, and bad-tempered. If he guessed wrong, he would definitely offend both of them, and the consequences would be unimaginable. But if he didn't say it, he was very likely to miss a great opportunity. To guess or not to guess? Yin Yutian struggled fiercely in his heart. The fourth round of the gambling battle, Kang Chang vs. Wang Yan. Kang Chang was the top figure in the poisonous insect cultivation in Jiuli region, and his strength was extraordinary. Wang Yan was the descendant of the Wang family of the poisonous insect clan. Both of them were equally matched, and they couldn't tell the winner for a long time. It was a feast for the eyes of the practitioners present, and they couldn't help cheering. At this moment, Xian Jingzhou's mind was not on the arena. He stared at Su Li, walked closer, and uncovered the veil on her face. Xian Jingzhou's pupils suddenly shrank, and a strange face came into his eyes. This face was extremely ordinary, as if she was born like this, and there was no trace of changing her face. Senior sister apprentice. At this time, Xian Jingzhou had already stepped forward excitedly and asked about her well-being. The rest of the elders of Jiguang sect were in awe and didn't dare to step forward. Although there were many evil sects in Jiuli region, Jiguang sect was a genuine sect, and the mental method it practiced was also moderate and vast. Although it would kill in the cultivation circle, it would not abuse and kill as casually as Su Li. However, Xianan had been with Su Li for a month, and he had long been accustomed to Su Li's style. He was even influenced by Su Li and became a little evil. Su Li is good at changing her face in the reincarnation mirror. I can't tell whether this face is real or fake. This thought flashed through Xian Jingzhou's mind, but he smiled on the surface and stepped forward. When he was about to speak, he saw Su Li look at him indifferently. I show up not for your Jiguang sect, but for the sake of Xianan. I have no interest in the life or death of your Jiguang sect. As she said, Su Li turned her eyes back to Xianan, and suddenly became gentle. Junior fellow apprentice, the carrier rune I gave you is not wasted like this. Chapter 502. Xianan didn't expect that Su Li didn't like his father and others so much. He immediately laughed awkwardly. Senior sister apprentice, I understand your mind. Su Li smiled slightly. It's human nature. I don't blame you. It's just that this matter is too light compared to your life. You used it recklessly. Xianan understood Su Li's meaning, and his heart was slightly warm. The 3 opportunities to send messages were all for him to save his life. He scratched his head and said with a smile, I see, senior sister apprentice. After the two chatted, Su Li raised her head. Xian Jingzhou's thoughts were mixed together, and he didn't know what expression to show. This woman had a deep hatred for the sect and didn't want to have too much contact with them. He immediately gave up the idea of inquiring about her origin in order not to annoy her. As an elder, he could naturally see that Su Li's concern for Xianan was real. Although he didn't know the reason, it was always a good thing that Xianan was valued by such a strong person. If he could learn the nature of poisonous insect cultivation, he would be more popular in the cultivation circle. After he came back from the reincarnation mirror, he was much less interested in sects and sectarian views than before. On the surface, he was still the lord of Jiguang sect, and he even handed over part of the responsibility to Xianan. But in his heart, he didn't stick to the form. Xianan stayed in Jiguang sect, and his future was limited. If he could have a better way out, he would be more than happy. In any case, You still helped my sect a lot. If you don't mind, I can send someone to prepare a quiet room for you to adjust your breath," he said calmly, and his posture was extremely low. Su Li nodded slightly. She still had a few battles to solve, and it was not good for her to return to the ordinary room. Seeing Su Li agreed, Xian Jingju immediately arranged for Xian and to take her there in person. The quiet room was prepared by the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. It was also on the 3rd floor, not far from the venue. After Xian and brought Su Li over, he didn't disturb her and left. Snap. Gently locking the door, Su Li quietly watched the surrounding tactical matrix runes attack and drown the door frame. The cheers outside suddenly became much smaller. The Linli building appeared in Qingshui Circle. She turned back to the rush cushion and sat down. She was lost in thought. From what Tang Li and Li said, she guessed that the Gulling gambling battle was clearly a trap set by the holy sects for the Linli building. There was a strong sense of probing. The evil sword sect and the other sects were not as good as the sage sect. They had limited resources, so they could only invite rogue cultivators to fight. But behemoths like the Tiani tribe and Huangxing Hall, which had many inherited lineages in their sects, also invited rogue cultivators to participate in the battle. It shouldn't be. A trace of doubt flashed in Su Li's eyes. Her fingertips touched the black lotus ring, and the flying infant poisonous insect appeared in her hand. Master, the ghost energy in this GU has been completely extracted. Black Lotus flashed out and presented a black crystal with both hands. Ghost shadows lingered on it, sometimes condensing into a skull, and sometimes dissipating. Su Li took the crystal and looked at Black Lotus meaningfully. "Well done. I didn't know you had such ability." Hearing this, Black Lotus did not feel that it was a compliment at all. He said embarrassedly, "I don't have that kind of ability. It was that stupid donkey." "Oh." Su Li raised her eyebrows. The heart of the little beast in the reincarnation mirror suddenly jumped and it looked perturbed. Su Li didn't say anything. She exerted her strength in her hand, and the black baby in the tortoise's breath was instantly ignited into a ball of flame and burned into ashes in the raging fire. "Master!" Black Lotus was stunned. It was impossible for Su Li to not know the role of the flying infant poisonous insect. Apart from the attack power, this top corpse poisonous insect was also excellent for collecting ghost energy. Su Li smiled lightly. "What I lack is not ghost energy, but spiritual jades." Black Lotus was stunned and immediately smiled bitterly. Yes, his current master was really an anomaly in the anomaly. The human clan with the body of evil ghost didn't practice ghost energy at all, but the supreme practice method of the human clan. Su Li threw the black crystal to the evil ghost to study. She hadn't figured out the nature of the body of evil ghost, and her pubic region didn't contain ghost energy. So, she didn't know the use of the ghost energy crystal for a while. If the evil ghost couldn't study anything, it was better to give this thing directly to the green shadow to let him improve his cultivation. Su Li was interrupted by Black Lotus, and her look relaxed a little. Perhaps this slight relaxation gave her inspiration. Su Li suddenly froze, and her mind changed. Thanks to the previous life, she had always put the holy sects in a very high position. In her mind, the holy sects were unattainable and unfathomable. However, although she had taken advantage of the situation to enter the Frigid sect, and had been lucky, it was a fact that she had injured the vitality of the Frigid sect. Perhaps the holy sects were not as powerful as she thought. Perhaps she underestimated the identity of the Daughter of Luck. There are many outstanding people in the 4 top holy sects. Many of them are shrewd and intelligent. It is impossible for them to be completely controlled by a fate ancestor. They also have their own ideas, such as the Huangxing Hall. Su Li's eyes fluctuated, and there was an inexplicable light in them. Not everyone is malicious to the Daughter of Luck. I am too pessimistic. But I can't relax my vigilance. The Gulling gambling battle is to test the authenticity of the Linli building and my existence. But all the sects send casual practitioners. If I really show up and show the strength of a junior emperor, or even a higher level like an immortal, those sects will have a reason to disassociate themselves and take those casual practitioners as scapegoats. I have just been reborn for less than 20 years. Who founded the Linli building? How far has the power developed? I only know Xian Jingju here this time. Is Xian Jingju a member of the Linli building? Su Li took a deep breath, and her eyes returned to calm. She had many questions in her mind, but in the seat of the Jiguang sect, she pretended to be indifferent and did not contact Xian Jingju. She knew the experience of Xian Jingju, and the rest of the holy sects knew it better than her. It was hard to guarantee that someone was investigating him. If she was not Su Li, she naturally would not have any concerns. But she accidentally fell into this trap. If she had too much contact with Xian Jingju, there was a risk of exposure. At that time, the layout of the Zhouzhou region would be destroyed. Don't worry. Su Li narrowed her eyes, which were clear and cold. Fellow practitioner Su, have you had a good rest? The 5th round is about to begin, and your opponent is Gui Bian. Yin Ju's voice came through the special sound transmission device in the quiet room. Su Li immediately got up and pushed the door open. Xianan, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, saw her and immediately greeted her. As he walked, he said quickly, "Senior sister apprentice, be careful. Gui Bian's means are very strange. My father suspects that it is a very high-grade poisonous spirit-confusing insect." Su Li nodded indifferently and asked, "What was the result of the last round?" Xian obviously got the guidance of Xian Jingju, and his answer was very smooth, "Kang Chang won, but my father said that Kang Chang was not the opponent of Wang Yian. Wang Yian reserved his strength and deliberately fought with Kang Chang. He came out of the mountain to gain experience, so he naturally wanted to fight with more people." "Your father is right." Su Li agreed. Her figure flickered a few times, and then she went very far away and walked to the arena. Xianan stopped and smiled. The familiar feeling came back. The strength of senior sister apprentice was invincible. Even Gui Bian, who killed Wu Yunjiao, couldn't defeat her. Su Zhouzhou is here. As soon as Su Li came to the arena, the field suddenly became quiet. Whether it was the 5 forces or the ordinary practitioners, they all stared at the arena intently, for fear of missing any details. Both of them were unknown, and their means were ruthless. Who was more powerful in this round? Gui Bian's eyes under the white eyebrows narrowed, and his face was full of smiles. He was not in a hurry to fight, and said in a gentle tone with a trace of admiration, "It is really amazing that there is such a young and beautiful poisonous insect practitioner as fellow practitioner Su in Zhouzhou region. I don't know if I have the honor to see your beautiful face." As soon as these words came out, Yi Wenying, who was sitting on the seat of the Tianyin tribe, suddenly frowned and scolded in his heart. This time, the task of gulling gambling battle fell on him, who was not valued very much. He made up his mind to do it beautifully, and it took him a lot of effort to find Gui Bian. This old lecher, I even let him enjoy my favorite concubine, and he still wants to pick up girls at this time. The practitioners in the field also felt strange. Gui Bian's words were too inappropriate. When Su Li heard the words, she covered her mouth and chuckled. Her tone was soft. "What's so difficult? In fact, I cover my face for you." Gui Bian's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his face changed slightly. The black veil was uncovered, and Su Li's face when she walked in Zhouli region was revealed to everyone. Many practitioners saw that her face was ordinary, and they couldn't help but feel disappointed. "It's really her." Yin Yutian suddenly stood up, full of regret. Yin Ju noticed his abnormality. When he was wondering why, he heard his son say with a wry smile, "Dad, Su Zhouzhou is the distinguished guest who was stolen, Gui Bian." Before Yin Yutian finished his words, Yin Ju's face also changed. He didn't take the theft seriously just now, but he didn't expect that both of them were powerful, and they even met in gulling gambling battle. As for the strength of these two people, he couldn't tell for a moment who was stronger. How to choose a side? Yin Ju had a headache and looked at the two people confronting in the field. On the stage, the smile on Gui Bian's face had long disappeared, and he stared at Su Li viciously. When Su Li showed her true face just now, he immediately had the idea of escaping. But when he thought of the Tianyin tribe and the poisonous insect that he had used up the celestial stones to upgrade during this period, he immediately calmed down, and even became a little angry. His strength had reached a new level. Even if he was in the peak stage of nature's test, he could fight with him. If he went further, he would be a junior emperor. The woman in front of him was definitely no more than 500 years old. A junior emperor at the age of 500 years old was impossible. I can never lose. Thinking of this, he opened his 5 fingers without saying a word. Countless transparent insects flew out and shrouded Su Li's head. But before they flew halfway, he was horrified to see that the insect stopped halfway and turned into a flash of light at a faster speed, shooting at his head. In a hurry, Gui Bian rolled on the ground in embarrassment to avoid the transparent insects, but he was in a panic. Why did his poisonous insect confusion bite the master? What was the enemy he was facing? Are you relying on these little things? Su Li walked over with a faint smile, and there were faint electric arcs flashing between her palms. My celestial stones were all wasted by you on these rubbish poisonous insects. You really deserve to die. Chapter 503. Tick. Sweat flowed down Gui Bian's cheeks, and unprecedented depression filled his heart. At this moment, Su Li in front of him seemed to have shed a layer of camouflage. The heavy breath in his bones made it extremely difficult for him to dodge. Suddenly, the memory buried in his heart for a long time was evoked. His eyes widened and showed fear. This is by no means cultivation, but the suppression from the life level. The demon girl is definitely not a human. Alien. She is an alien. Gui Bian's pupils turned wildly, and he opened his mouth to tell others, but the words became meaningless roars in his throat, like a desperate beast, which was chilling. Su Li was expressionless, and her body didn't move. She just crooked her fingers, and the transparent flying insects, which fell on the ground and emitted bursts of light smoke, came to life in an instant, and all went into Gui Bian's head in the blink of an eye. All the roars stopped abruptly. Gui Bian's eyes became dull at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then he stood up directly and walked respectfully to Su Li's side. He put his hands in his sleeves and stood with his head down, like an old servant. Whoosh! The wind that was not cold blew through the hall, but the practitioners of the 5 forces couldn't help but shiver. They looked at Su Li with strong fear instead of scruples. This woman was mysterious, and even they couldn't see through her means. Gui Bian could even kill Wu Yunjiao, but he couldn't survive one move from this woman. It could be imagined how horrible her strength was. Is she a character at the level of junior emperor? Yin Ju was still shocked on the surface, but he was shocked in his heart. His eyes glowed with obscure light, trying to recognize a trace of clues from Su Li's face, but he was soon disappointed. This person did not disguise herself, or she couldn't see through her. Where on earth does this woman come from? She is so powerful. Yin Ju was puzzled. He soon noticed that Su Li's eyes looked at him again. He was shocked at the moment, and quickly announced her victory. Lord Yin, I will let Gui Bian repay his debt until he dies, but does your Chamber of Commerce still need to give me an explanation? Su Li opened her red lips slightly. Yin Ju had already expected that she would have this question. He reluctantly smiled and apologized. This matter is indeed the fault of our Chamber of Commerce. After the gulling gambling battle is over, please stay for a while, and I will give you a satisfactory explanation. What do you think? It's the same over there. Su Li glanced at Gui Bian, and Gui Bian immediately understood and retreated. Then Yin Ju saw that she pointed to Wang Yan, who was eager to have a try, and Kang Chang, who looked bitter. The remaining opponents, who will come first? Allow me. Wang Yan didn't wait for Kang Chang to speak. He jumped onto the ring, and his eyes were filled with fanatical fighting intent. He said respectfully, "You are very strong. I am not your opponent, but I still ask you to fight with me seriously." Su Li smiled and tilted her head. Really? At this glance, Wang Yan suddenly felt terrified, as if he had been penetrated by some invisible demon in an instant. His whole body became transparent from top to bottom, and nothing could be hidden. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he regretted his impulsiveness. Interesting. I want the GU worm in your body. A strong interest flashed in Su Li's eyes, and her body flashed and disappeared. This was the first time he took the initiative to attack. Wang Yan's scalp was numb, and he finally couldn't maintain the smile on his face. His face changed greatly and he wanted to retreat, but his feet seemed to be stuck in a sticky swamp and couldn't move. Poisonous insect of Miles. In the face of crisis, Wang Yian's pupils shrank, and his face turned red. He no longer cared about any consequences. He roared in his heart, and a dense cracking sound came from his feet. At the same time, his body also turned into a residual shadow in the blink of an eye. With a boom, he broke through the wall of the third floor and disappeared without a trace. All the practitioners, whose faces were covered by the lime on the wall, were stunned. They stared at the hole in the wall blankly, and they were speechless for a while. Poisonous insect of Miles tracking, although it is only half, Su Li blinked and didn't chase after him. She left a pneuma on Wang Yian with the talent of evil ghost. As long as it was not carefully examined by a junior emperor, it was impossible to be found. Refining spiritual jades can't be done overnight. Even if I find the spiritual jades suitable for improving my cultivation, I have to improve continuously from another way. It seems that the poisonous cultivation insect can be considered. Su Li looked at the big hole in the wall, and thoughts flashed through her mind. Then her eyes fell on Yin Ju's face again. Yin Ju didn't expect that Wang Yian had the ability to break the tactical matrix on the third floor. He announced with embarrassment, "This round, fellow practitioner Su wins. The next round, needless to say, I admit defeat." Kang Chang stood up with a wry smile. He could see that Su Jojo was invincible. Her cultivation and combat effectiveness were not at the same level as them at all. Why should he go up to die? Well, then, the winner of this gulling gambling battle is Su Jojo of Jiguang sect. Wow! All the ordinary practitioners present couldn't help but stand up, and some even couldn't help but salute to Su Li. That was the respect of the weak to the strong. It's only been half a day. Xian Jingju stood up unconsciously and watched the black-veiled woman in the field lightly grasping the sound acquaintance in her hand. He was in a trance for a while, full of a sense of unreality. Did their Jiguang sect win like this? Oh no. Xian Jingzhou's face suddenly changed slightly. Thinking of the previous arrangement, it should have been agreed before the fight. But Su Jojo suddenly appeared, and there was no agreement between them. Would this woman cooperate with his plan? Let's go. The Lord of Yingquan's sect stood up, and his eyebrows twitched for a moment. Finally, he left with a gloomy face and dared not mention revenge. The strength shown by this woman was at least a little stronger than him. It was impossible for him to seek justice alone, and he would only humiliate himself. Go back and investigate her background, and let the Grand Elder of the sect take action. I don't believe that this woman will be a junior emperor. Fellow practitioner Su, please come to the top floor. On the arena, Yin Ju walked over politely. Su Li calmly put away the sound acquaintance, glanced at the people of Jiguang sect, and turned away. Send a sound transmission to your father and ask him to prepare. He will know what it means. When Xian heard Su Li's sound transmission, he was inexplicably at a loss, but he still obediently conveyed the words to Xian Jingju. Xian Jingju sighed softly when he heard the words, and he was relieved in his heart. As long as you are willing to talk about the conditions, everything is negotiable. Yi Wenying's face was extremely gloomy, but he did not dare to show a trace of malice against Su Li. After Su Li left the third floor, he dared to snort coldly, "You can't accomplish anything but spoil things. Let's go back." The rest of the members of the Tianyin tribe didn't make a sound, and they didn't show any different expressions on the surface. But they all thought in their hearts, is the clan brother talking about himself? How can the clan send him to take charge of this action? Now that he screwed it up, even we may be punished. Several people communicated secretly and sighed secretly. If he didn't have a promising brother, how could we be under him? He is so lucky to have a brother, but he is really an idiot and impetuous. Look, he will die in his own hands sooner or later. After scolding for a while, they seemed to feel much more comfortable in their hearts. They showed hypocritical smiles on their faces and followed Yi Wenying out of the gate of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. In the hall on the top floor, Su Li looked at the simple decoration in the hall and praised softly, "Elder Yin is still an elegant person. He is just an artsy person. It's not worth mentioning." Yin Ju waved his hand and said modestly. The tension in his heart was eased a lot by Su Li's words. This woman's means were ruthless, but her temperament didn't seem to be so difficult to get along with. He waved his hand and dismissed all the servants in the hall, leaving only his son, Yin Yutian. Then he looked at Gui Bian behind Su Li hesitantly. Su Li smiled indifferently and said lightly, "It doesn't matter. You just treat him as a deaf person." Yin Ju's face trembled slightly, but he quickly calmed down. But the previous trace of relaxation had disappeared. He pointed at Yin Yutian, and the latter immediately came forward and knelt down. "Senior, I didn't handle this matter well. Please forgive me." Su Li glanced at Yin Yutian strangely. "What's wrong with you?" Yin Yutian was flustered. He opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to say it. Could he say that he recognized Su Li before? No. This kind of secret peeping would only be regarded as a provocation, which would annoy Su Jojo. Su Li saw his face turn pale quickly, and waved her hand uninterestedly. "Although this matter is related to the negligence of your Chamber of Commerce, it has little to do with you. Elder Yin, I want to talk to you about some private things." "Elder thinks." Yin Ju breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the words. He cupped his fists and said, "As long as it doesn't touch the secret, I will definitely satisfy you. In addition, I will prepare the compensation." Su Li nodded. Yin Yutian's face recovered a trace of blood, and he immediately retreated. Yin Ju glanced at Gui Bian, who had a dull expression, strangely. He looked serious and asked, "What do you want to know, fellow practitioner Su?" Su Li picked up the teacup unhurriedly with a strange smile on her face. "How is the attitude of Huangxing Hall towards the descendant of the ghost clan?" As soon as these words came out, Yin Ju was shocked, and his body couldn't help trembling. You, Su Li still smiled, as if she didn't see Yin Ju's panic at all. "The son of First Elder is very good." Her first words made Yin Ju breathe disorderly and suffocate. "You are the host of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. But at best, he is just a butler who has been delegated to various places. He has no potential to rise. Do you think that if you and your son die, Huangxing Hall will avenge you?" Yin Ju's old face trembled violently, and his neatly combed hair was a little messy. He clenched his hands and imagined countless times to quickly take out the carrier rune from the universe ring to send a message to the sect. But every time he thought of his son and the sarcastic remarks he had received in Huangxing Hall over the years, the tea was cold. Yin Ju's hands suddenly loosened, and his straight back stooped down. It seemed that something was broken in his heart. He raised his head and said bitterly, "I will tell you everything. Don't kill my son." Su Li held her cheek with one hand and blinked. Her curly eyelashes trembled. "Your child is so sensible. How can I kill innocent people?" Chapter 504. Yin Ju had been in charge of the Chamber of Commerce for many years. Since he had made a decision, he quickly calmed down and asked, "The descendant of the ghost clan you mentioned, is it the one who made trouble in the Snow Sect? Besides her, are there other descendants of the ghost clan?" Su Li asked rhetorically. Yin Ju was suddenly speechless. He quickly sorted out and explained in detail. "My potential is limited. I usually don't have much contact with the Holy Hall of Huangxing Hall. I am not as well informed as you think. I can only tell you what I have seen." As Yin Ju said, his voice was slightly lowered, and there was even a trace of doubt. "It seems that the elders of the Holy Hall do not all believe in the Fate Ancestor. I carefully observed and found that the people of the Holy Hall are basically divided into 3 factions. The first one, I call it the Fanatic faction. They almost regard the words of the Fate Ancestor as the golden rule. As long as the Fate Ancestor gives an order, the henchmen will execute it without hesitation." "Are there many such people?" Su Li narrowed her eyes and asked. Yin Ju shook his head. "There are only a few elders who are not in power supporting them. They should be at the bottom of the 3 factions." Su Li nodded slightly. Yes, if this faction really controlled the Huangxing Hall, it would simply change the name of the force to the Fate Hall. The lord of the Huangxing Hall was not a fool. How could he let an outsider seize power? Su Li guessed that the reason why the lord of the Huangxing Hall could still tolerate the existence of the radical faction was that he was afraid of the relationship between the fate ancestor and the natural law. At this time, Yin Ju continued, the second faction is the neutral faction with the largest number of people, including the lord of the hall. They turn a blind eye to the fate ancestor's order. They neither refuse nor execute it, but just perfunctorily. It seems that they don't want to offend the descendant of the ghost clan. When Yin Ju said this, he secretly observed Su Li's reaction, but he saw that the latter looked calm and breathed smoothly, without the slightest change. Is this woman the descendant of the ghost clan herself, or someone around the descendant of the ghost clan? He thought secretly, and his guess was more inclined to the latter. At that time, the means of the ghost clan's killing in the ghost region were purely lethal, which was different from the poisonous insect practitioner. However, even with that being the case, I am unable to see through this woman's cultivation base. She is definitely not someone to be trifled with. After making up his mind, Yin Ju's eyes flashed, and he continued, the third faction is the one who resents the fate ancestor's edict and has been secretly seeking ways to kill the fate ancestor. This faction is mixed in the neutral faction. I don't know how many people there are, but from my daily investigation, its power should be much larger than that of the radical faction. I even found that several of them are inextricably linked to the Leanly building, a force that rose after the bloody accident of Holy Spirit. That's all I know. Tap, 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 Su Li tapped the table rhythmically with her knuckles. She smiled and cupped her hands. Thank you for your explanation, Elder Yin. I was ordered to do what happened today. You and I each serve different masters, so you should understand the helplessness involved. I've troubled you for a long time. I'll take my leave now. Yin Ju's face was calm, but the details still exposed the fact that he was greatly relieved. He quickly stood up to see Su Li off. He took the universe ring prepared by the Chamber of Commerce as an apology and sent Su Li to the door. Then he hurriedly returned to the top attic. Bang, bang, bang. With a serious look, he waved his hand to close all the doors of the hall, and the light in the entire hall immediately became dim. After finishing this step, Yin Ju was still worried. After setting a barrier on the isolation tactical matrix, he took out an emergency carrier rune of Huangxing Hall with trembling hands. The traces of the descendants of the ghost clan appear in Jiuli region. This must be reported to the Holy Hall. He pinched the golden carrier rune and looked at the round button on it that flickered. His face was uncertain for a moment, but he finally pressed it. After reporting his encounter with Su Jojo to the hall, Yin Ju breathed a sigh of relief, but he found that his back was already wet. He gasped, and the sweat on his body evaporated, and the mist evaporated. Although the descendants of the ghost clan are only slightly exposed, it's hard to guarantee that they will be discovered in places that I haven't discovered. If I don't report it, I will definitely be blamed by the hall. Although those lunatics of the radical faction are the weakest in the Holy Hall, they are still giants for me. I can't afford to provoke them. Yin Ju felt bitter in his heart. It was so difficult for the weak to survive. My potential is exhausted, but Yu Tian still has the possibility to rise. I have opened up half of the way to the Holy Hall to practice. Yu Tian, don't let me down. After Su Li left the Chamber of Commerce, she flew straight to the Jiguang sect. As she flew, she carefully scanned the dark golden universe ring with her divine awareness. After finding that there was no trace, she directly transferred all the compensation into the Black Lotus ring and discarded the universe ring. After doing this, Su Li's eyes flashed. With so many spiritual jades, I don't have to worry about Sueyu tactics before breaking through. This trip has solved the problem of breaking through Sueyu tactics, and I have gained a lot. After a trip to the Jiguang sect, I will go back directly. It has been a long time since I came out. Thinking of this, she sped up. There were 300,000 celestial stones in the stolen universe ring. At her request, the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce changed the compensation to 1.8 million spiritual jades, 80% of which was a kind of cheap Pojing jade. Pojing jade, a kind of spiritual jade of little value in the cultivation circle, had a slight sharpness effect when it was used to polish magic weapons. However, Because the consumption was too high, its price-performance ratio was far lower than other treasures to improve magic weapons, so few people bought it. One celestial stone could be exchanged for 10 pieces of pojing jade. Under Su Li's boring attempt, this kind of spiritual jade actually produced an effect that was 10,000 times higher than other spiritual jades. After Su Li sensed her bottleneck, she directly waved her hand and emptied the inventory of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. She bought all the inventory of 1.6 million celestial stones, and the remaining 170,000 celestial stones were used to buy more strange spiritual jades. Those spiritual jades were extremely rare and valuable. Just hundreds of them used up all the remaining compensation amount, and even slightly exceeded. After sorting out her gains with satisfaction, the mountain gate of the Jiguang sect was already in sight. Su Li squinted at Xian and at the foot of the Qingshan mountain. She waved her sleeve and turned into a black rainbow falling quickly. Xianan knew that she was coming, and immediately said with joy, "Senior sister apprentice." Su Li glanced at the two elders in black beside him who were sizing her up. They were quite unfamiliar. They should be the elders who stayed in the sect to guard the home. "Senior sister apprentice, my father has been waiting in the hall of the sect for a long time," Xianan said quickly, regardless of how the two elders looked at him. Su Li nodded and looked away from the two elders. "Let's go in." The two elders in black saw that Su Li was so rude and didn't even say hello to them. They were angry in their hearts, but they didn't show any expression on the surface. They led Su Li into the sect stiffly. The mountain gate of the Jiguang sect was a little old. Moss could occasionally be seen on the long stone steps of the mountain gate. The deeper Su Li went, the higher the concentration of nimbus was. She looked through the earth and stones and saw the complex spirit-gathering tactical matrix running on its own. The grade of this tactical matrix is at least more than the 12th grade, but it has been in disrepair for a long time. There are many blockages, so the effect of spirit gathering is reduced to the 9th grade. It is even slightly inferior. The past of the Jiguang sect seems to be interesting. Su Li's eyes flashed a hint of light. She didn't see such an old tactical matrix in the Snow sect, and its grade was not as high as this one. Not long after, Su Li arrived at the hall of the sect accompanied by Xian An and others. Xian Jingju, who had been waiting for a long time, quickly got up and laughed. "Fellow practitioner Su, it's really an honor for us to come to our sect. Come on, serve the best refreshing tea of our Jiguang sect." Before he finished speaking, he saw Su Li reach out to stop him. She said indifferently, "There is no need to drink tea. Why did the Lord invite me here? I'm in a hurry to go back. It's better to come straight to the point." Xian Jingzhou's smile froze. The two elders in black standing not far behind Su Li were even more unkind, and the magic weapons in their hands were ready to take action. "Father, senior sister apprentice, you." Xianan was anxious at once. He really didn't want to see the two people who were close to him have a conflict. Even though Su Li had only been with him for a short time, how could he ignore her sincerity? Xian Jingju took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. His eyes softened, and he said to Xianan, "You and the two elders can leave. I'll talk to fellow practitioner Su alone." The two elders in black changed their faces slightly. "Lord." Although the Lord's cultivation was superb, Su Jojo's poisonous insect cultivation methods were mysterious and unpredictable. It was impossible to guard against her. How could they rest assured? "Leave. I think since fellow practitioner Su has a good impression of my son, she won't attack me for no reason, right?" Xian Jingju ordered and looked at Su Li. Su Li nodded and said concisely, "Of course." The elders in black hesitated for a moment when they heard the words. Finally, under Xian Jingzhou's gradually gloomy eyes, they retreated with Xian An. At this point, there was no one in the hall. Su Li waved her hand to set a soundproof boundary. She turned her hand and took out the sound acquaintance. She said meaningfully, "I think that since the gulling gambling battle is over, the only reason why Lord Xian can't forget me and warmly invite me is this immortal poisonous insect." Indeed. Xian Jingju admitted generously, and he couldn't hide it. He originally wanted to ask this woman for the sound acquaintance. "Since you have guessed it, can you give up this poisonous insect?" Jiguang sect is willing to pay the price to trade with you. Su Li smiled and nodded gently. Okay, I promise you. In this life, she had the all-spirits tactics, so the sound acquaintance had become useless. Xian Jingju was relieved when he heard the words. He thought that there was no need to take risks, and when Tingshan could breathe a sigh of relief. Although Su Jojo's means were ruthless, she was a reasonable person. Fellow practitioner Su, what do you want my Jiguang sect to offer in exchange? The smile on Xian Jingzhou's face was more sincere, but it soon disappeared in Su Li's next sentence. I don't lack anything now. Su Li's eyes flickered, and she stared at Xian Jingzhou's face. Tell me, the reason why you want the sound acquaintance, and I will give you the immortal poisonous insect. How about that? Xian Jingzhou's face became gloomy at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fellow practitioner Su, sometimes it's not a good thing to know too much. Su Li raised her eyebrows and looked at Xian Jingzhou, who had inexplicable emotions in her eyes. Her soft voice sounded in the hall. In fact, I can guess it even if you don't say it. It's for the Linli building, right? Chapter 505. Xian Jingzhou's face was completely cold. He stared at Su Li and said gloomily, Fellow practitioner Su, isn't your joke too much? As he said, he put his right hand behind his back without a trace, and a rune appeared in his palm. Our Jiguang sect is a righteous sect. How can we mix with such an evil organization? The black-clothed elders who guarded on both sides of the hall also became cold. They stepped silently and approached Su Li's back. For a time, the atmosphere in the hall was tense to the extreme. Giggle. Suddenly, Su Li covered her mouth and chuckled, breaking the dead silence. She apologized, I'm presumptuous. Xian Jingju, please don't blame me. As she said, she retracted her open palm, and sound acquaintance automatically flew to Xian Jingju. Since Xian Jingju is unwilling to answer my question, I will ask another one. I want to know some secrets of the Tianyin tribe. I wonder if Lord Xian can explain them. Su Li's sudden change made Xian Jingju slightly stunned, and then he quickly reacted. He looked at the sound acquaintance close at hand, and finally couldn't help accepting it. He looked up and said to the two people behind Su Li, you leave first. The black-clothed elders were originally Xian Jingzhou's confidants, so they naturally did not resist Xian Jingzhou's order. They looked at each other, and then left the hall. In the blink of an eye, only Su Li and Xian Jingju were left in the hall, sitting opposite each other. Xian Jingju raised the teapot in his hand and personally poured a cup of tea for Su Li. Seeing that the atmosphere eased, he smiled. What do you want to ask? Su Li smiled. As long as Lord Xian knows it, how about telling me all about it? I think an immortal poisonous insect of great significance is enough as a reward, right? Xian Jingju frowned slightly. He still couldn't figure out Su Jojo's background. Was this person an enemy or a friend? Was she sent by the holy sects to test him, or, his eyes flashed, and he asked instead of answering, I haven't asked fellow practitioner Su's teacher. You are so young, but you can defeat a strong practitioner in nature's test. You are really a talent. I think your teacher must be a big shot above junior emperor in the cultivation circle, right? Hearing Xian Jingzhou's explicit test, Su Li just smiled and took a sip of tea. She didn't mean to answer at all. Seeing this, Xian Jingju felt helpless. This woman was ruthless and had weird means. He really didn't want to offend her. Therefore, even if he had got the immortal GU, he still didn't dare to fool her casually. He immediately recalled all kinds of information about the Tianyin tribe for a moment, and said, the Tianyin tribe is the only holy sect in Zhouli region. I have collected a lot of news in recent years. Although the Tianyin tribe is only a new holy sect with less than 2,000 years, it has a lot of foundation. Ordinary holy sects only have one junior emperor, but the Tianyin tribe has two, and they are both young. Su Li listened quietly and did not interrupt. The strength of the Tianyin tribe was clearly described by Xian Jingju. Although the information was not necessarily accurate, it was a great supplement for her. The standard to measure the glory sect was a half-emperor, which was a figure in the great vehicle stage. The inheritance of the cultivation circle in Qingshui Circle had withered, and it was difficult to see the grand scene of the ancient times. There were almost no traces of the activities of the great emperors. Su Li guessed that only the 4 top sects might have the old people who were still alive. The system of training the descendants of the Tianyin tribe is slightly different from that of other sects, but it is almost the same. Yi Wenying, whom you saw in the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, is a holy son. He is a genius with small potential, equivalent to the core disciple in the sect. Those tribal disciples whose talents reach the standard of talents are given the title of Holy Son and Goddess, also known as Great Holy Son or Great Holy Girl. Talents have a very high status in the tribe, and the resources in the tribe are also greatly inclined to this small group of people. As long as they don't die prematurely, they will all be in power in the future. Finally, he talked about the Holy Son and Goddess. Su Li's eyes flashed. She was waiting for this moment. She pretended to be confused and said, "I heard Xian Jingju mention the Great Holy Son Yi Mo at the venue. What's special about this person among the talents? Why is he specially mentioned by Lord Xian?" Yi Mo. Ling Qinglan, a trace of hatred flashed through Xian Jingzhou's eyes, but he didn't show it on the surface. He only thought that Su Jouzhou in front of him was really curious, and said, "Speaking of this person, he is also a famous figure in the Tianyin tribe. Together with his sister, the great holy girl Yi Shui, they are known as the Tianyin tribe's double talents. The 2 of them became famous 1,000 years ago. After surviving the bloody accident of Holy Spirit, their talents soared. In just a few hundred years, they broke through Yuanying realm and reached Huashan realm. Now more than 500 years have passed. Their cultivation is probably even more unfathomable." The more Su Li listened, the more doubts she had in her heart. According to Xian Jingju, Ling Qinglan and Yi Shui both returned to the tribe and had not left. So, who were the 2 people staying in Jouzhou region? She narrowed her eyes slightly, stroked the surface of Black Lotus Ring, and said slowly, "Lord Xian really has a deep study of the Tianyin tribe, which makes me gain a lot. I have one last question. If I want to completely destroy the Tianyin tribe, Lord Xian, what can you do?" Xian Jingju was stunned and thought that he had misheard. He said in astonishment, "What did you say?" Su Li smiled and lowered her eyes. She picked up the tea and took a sip, as if she was talking about a trivial matter. "I said that I want to destroy the Tianyin tribe." Lord Xian didn't mishear me. In the hall, there was a dead silence again. Xian Jingju stared at the young and delicate face in front of him. The bloody words seemed indescribable incongruity when they came out from the woman's mouth. Was Su Jouzhou crazy to destroy the holy sect? His eyelids twitched. Thinking of Su Jouzhou's words and deeds just now, he always felt that he had come into contact with a great trouble. Only the evil practitioners will easily destroy the whole sect. The evil circle. He struggled to maintain calm and whispered, "May I ask why you want to destroy the holy sect of Tianyin tribe?" He deliberately emphasized the word holy sect in order to remind the power of the Tianyin tribe. But the delicate girl in front of him didn't seem to notice it at all. She just smiled and replied with clear and bright eyes, "I just can't stand the arrogant look of the holy sect. Isn't it good to destroy it? As long as it is destroyed, your Jiguang sect will become the first sect in Zhouli region. What's wrong with that?" Su Li's natural look made Xian Jingzhou's face twitch, and he smiled bitterly. It's not like this. He was more and more sure that he had met a crazy female evil practitioner who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. But this evil practitioner had means that even he was very afraid of, so he couldn't answer casually. "Destroy a holy sect," Xian Jingju muttered, and for the first time, he began to seriously think about such an absurd question. After a long time, he raised his head with a bitter face. "If you want to destroy the holy sect, you must get rid of the junior emperor. Otherwise, there is no need to talk about it. It doesn't matter. I have enough time." Su Li blinked her eyes with a trace of innocence on her face. "The junior emperor is not a god. How can 2 people pay attention to the tribe all the time? Lord Xian, is there any way to make the Tianyin tribe suffer a great loss?" Xian Jingju was just dealing with it helplessly. When he heard this sentence, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind, and his heart immediately beat wildly uncontrollably. "Maybe I can use this woman to kill the 2 people, Xian Jingju suppressed the excitement in his heart, and thoughts turned quickly in his mind. The evil practitioner deserves to die. If she really has a way to kill the two people and liberate her soul, maybe Qinglan and his sister can be saved. Thinking of this, Xian Jingju immediately organized his words and pretended to be surprised. Fellow practitioner Su, there may be an opportunity for you to do it in the Mirage Immortal Festival 5 days later. Half a day later, Su Li stayed in the guest room of the Jiguang sect. After waving her hand to dismiss the maid, she closed the door, turned back and sat on the futon, frowning slightly. The Mirage Immortal Festival was the most important traditional festival of the Tianyin tribe, which aimed to worship the ancestor of the Tianyin tribe, the Mirage Immortal. It was said that the Tianyin tribe was also a big tribe in ancient times. There were immortals in the tribe. Among them, the Mirage Immortal went the furthest on the road of cultivation. Later, for some reason, all the immortals in the world disappeared, including the Mirage Immortal. The prestige of the Tianyin tribe declined greatly. However, the clansmen of the Tianyin tribe didn't believe that the most powerful existence in their tribe died like this. Therefore, they held sacrificial activities every year, hoping to get a response. Whether this matter was fabricated by the Tianyin tribe or it was true, it could not be verified. However, it was not important whether it was true or not. What was important was that most of the geniuses and talents of the Tianyin tribe would gather on the square of the Tianyin tribe that day. Xian Jingju also specially pointed out that the most talented brother and sister, Yi Mo and Yin Shui, who presided over the sacrificial ceremony of the Mirage Immortal Festival. Xian Jingju, you want to use me to kill Ling Qinglan and Yi Shui. Why? Black Lotus, you tell me, why? Su Li rubbed the ring, and her eyes flickered. Although Xian Jingju concealed it very well today, she still saw through the flaws. Xian Jingju must be involved in the Linli building. He is on my side, but he has always wanted to kill Ling Qinglan in the Tianyin tribe. Although I can't feel the familiar soul fluctuation of Ling Qinglan in the Jiuzhou region, his expression and words are all the same. Are there two Ling Qinglan? Su Li closed her eyes, and the conjecture in her mind gradually became clear. The awakened Black Lotus looked at Su Li helplessly and fell into contemplation. He still wanted to contribute some brains, but Su Li's question was not to him, but to herself. There is the skill of dividing souls in ancient times. Since the Tianyin tribe has been inherited for a long time, it is normal for them to master some tricks. Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui are incomplete. Maybe there is more than one divided soul, Black Lotus said his own conjecture. Then, if this is the case, the divided souls of the Tianyin tribe must be killed. Su Li suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were calm, and there was a trace of pity in her tone. I just wanted to test Xian Jingju, and I didn't want to do it. Black Lotus was stunned for a moment, and then sighed. The skill of dividing souls is a trick. How can you tell which is Ling Qinglan and which is not? This is simple. Su Li narrowed her eyes and smiled brightly. The shadow behind her loomed. Just kill all the young generation. Chapter 506. At night, the Tiani River passing through the center of the city was calm. Pleasure boats with red houses with red lanterns were floating on the river. Yi Wenying, with his hands behind his back and 2 attendants behind him, boarded the largest pleasure boat with ease. The beautiful boat lady immediately greeted him with a charming voice. Holy boy Wenying, I haven't seen you for a long time. Huan often talks about you. I've been busy with the affairs of the sect recently, so I seldom come here. Yi Wenying's eyes drifted over the boat lady's chest and asked with a smile, where is Huan? She's dressing up. The boat lady threw a coquettish look. Since the holy boy was selected, Huan has never contacted other guests. She misses you every day and waits for you to come and pamper her. Haha, well done. Yi Wenying laughed out loud and casually sent 2 attendants to follow the boat lady down. Then he hurried to Huan's room. Squeak child, I miss you so much. He waved his hand to open the door, and a pair of soft and boneless arms wrapped around his neck. Words with the fragrance of orchids blew on his face. Child, you must be tired. Come in and have a rest. Yi Wenying's eyes flashed with intoxication, and he immediately grabbed the person in front of him with both hands and closed the door in Juan's shameful scream. Soon, there was a suppressed gasp in the room. Gui Bayan stood in front of the door. There were a lot of boat ladies around, but none of them noticed his existence. The white ball of light in his hand gradually turned black and finally became transparent. When Yi Wenying's face appeared on it, he immediately turned around, bowed and said in a low voice, "Master, it's done." Su Li nodded gently and took the light in her palm. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps outside the pleasure boat, mixed with a faint angry conversation. Lanting Pleasure Boat is junior brother Wenying's favorite place. I heard that he also hired a prostitute, although she was a virgin, bastard. How can a holy boy linger in a red house? It's a disgrace to our tribe. Senior brother, the prostitutes in Lanting Pleasure Boat are carefully prepared for practitioners. It's not. What did you say? The tribe's sacrificial ceremony is just around the corner, and we're so busy that we can't spare any attention, but is actually spending his time here. At this point, Su Li finally saw several men wearing the costumes of the disciples of the Tianyin tribe step on the gala-painted boat. One of them pushed away the boatwoman who greeted them coldly, walked straight in, and kicked the door of Yi Wenying. Boom! A loud noise scared Yi Wenying, who was working hard on his plowing, and he almost died. He turned his head abruptly, and the anger in his heart was immediately extinguished by a bucket of cold water. He said in a panic, "Senior brother, why are you here?" The long-faced young man's eyes widened. He couldn't help but stare at such an erotic scene. Then, he directly grabbed Yi Wenying and dragged her out. "Little junior brother, do you want to anger master to death? The sacrificial ceremony is with you, but you didn't keep your body clean and came to such a dirty place. If the elders of the tribe find out..." Yi Wenying naturally knew the consequences, but he couldn't control his lower body. Now that he was discovered by his senior brother, he heaved a sigh of relief and quickly begged for mercy. "Eldest senior brother, please don't be angry. It's my fault. You must help me hide this. I will show filial piety to you senior brothers later." The long-faced young man coughed when he heard the words, and his expression eased slightly. He put down Yi Wenying and said with a straight face, "Put on your clothes quickly." He didn't really want to get involved in this matter, but just wanted to extort some practice resources from Yi Wenying. Since the effect was achieved, of course, he wouldn't be so persistent. A moment later, Yi Wenying dealt with the inexplicable smell on his body, and left quickly with the long-faced young man and others. But he had a lot of doubts in his heart. He came to the gala-painted pleasure boat on a whim. Who told him the secret? In doubt, he didn't notice that the shadow behind him fluctuated for a moment, and then returned to calm. Gui Bayan stood in the same place and watched everyone go away. Then he immediately changed his appearance and quickly came to the teleportation matrix of Tianyi City. After handing a large amount of spiritual stones to the manservant, he said in a deep voice, "The fastest teleportation matrix, send me to Jiuzhou region." The manservant took the spiritual stones and was overjoyed. He quickly opened all the complicated matrix patterns. Boom! The teleportation matrix suddenly ran, and Gui Bayan's figure disappeared instantly. At the same time, Yi Wenying followed his senior fellow apprentice and others through the tribal big matrix. The fluctuation of the tribal big matrix spread out, and soon returned to calm. "Junior fellow apprentice, why are you always in a daze?" The long-faced young man suddenly appeared, and Yi Wenying, who was absent-minded, was startled. He forced a smile and said, "Senior fellow apprentice, I'm fine. I just feel strange somewhere, as if something horrible is staring at me in the dark." "What?" The long-faced young man looked strange. "Little junior fellow apprentice, some things can't be said casually. No one has successfully invaded the tribal big matrix for thousands of years. Even the strong of junior emperor was blocked outside. You said that you sensed the intention of peeping. Do you want to repudiate your promise?" Yi Wenying hurriedly waved his hand when he heard the words, No, I dare not. I'll send someone to send the gift to you later." He smiled apologetically, but he was very aggrieved in his heart. He also left the uncomfortable feeling behind. "You just practice for 200 years more than me, But you dare to bully me like this. When my cultivation surpasses you, I will teach you a lesson. He was full of indignation in his heart, but he put away all his emotions on the surface. He followed the long-faced young man step by step, and soon arrived at an extremely spacious square on the top of the mountain. Looking at the sparse disciples of the Tiani tribe in the square, another person behind the long-faced young man said, "The sacrificial ceremony of the Mirage Immortal will begin in a few hours. Senior fellow apprentice, let's find a place to wait." The long-faced young man nodded and found a futon to sit down. Yi Wenying and others sat behind him. They were quiet and waited silently. Just at the moment when Yi Wenying sat down, the shadow behind him twisted for a moment, and then Su Li, who was wearing the ordinary costume of the Tiani tribe, slowly appeared behind Yi Wenying. Yi Wenying and others didn't notice it. Su Li glanced at the unlit spiritual wood piled up in the center of the square, turned around and sat down in a corner. The Tiani tribe had a history of thousands of years, and there were many branches. The disciples of different branches were strange to each other, and some of them had never met each other. The disciples of the surrounding tribes turned their heads and glanced at her, and then no longer paid attention to her. They didn't doubt Su Li's identity at all. As time went by, more and more people came to the square and occupied the futons. Stewards, immortal sons and goddesses, and the elders in charge of the sacrificial ceremony also came to the Taoist rite one after another. The atmosphere became more and more lively. Boom! The last ray of light in the sky fell, and a line of fire ejected from the elders and fell into the spiritual wood. In an instant, it burst into the sky and illuminated everyone's face. Su Li looked up at the fire, and suddenly a pale young man sat down beside her. The clothes he wore were far less bright than those of other disciples. They were wrinkled and even faded. Alas, with a sigh, he turned his head and saw Su Li's childish face. He said bitterly, "Sister, have you offended the elders of the tribe and been forced to be a sacrifice?" Sacrifice? Su Li's eyes flickered, and she was confused after thinking for a moment, what is the sacrifice? My sister only asked me to join in the fun. She said that there are benefits, isn't it? When the pale young man heard the words, his eyes widened slightly, and he blurted out, "What? You don't know?" "Know what?" Su Li seemed to be flustered because of his words. "Brother, am I cheated?" Silence. Suddenly, a solemn voice came from the nothingness, and the noisy square instantly became silent. The young man opened his mouth, but he didn't dare to make a sound. He could only swallow the words in his mouth. With his low cultivation, he couldn't even transmit the sound secretly. A black light flashed in Su Li's eyes, and the last trace of hesitation disappeared. With her experience, even if this person didn't say it, she could guess a thing or two. In this life, I haven't killed too many people. I even don't want to kill innocent people because I have been comfortable for a long time. But Su Li narrowed her eyes and looked at the great holy Sun Yimo, who walked slowly to the high platform with a completely strange face. There are no innocent people in the cultivation circle. To worship the ancestors and summon the Mirage Immortal, the Tianyin tribe. At the same time, a group of elders in the Lord's Hall far away were watching everything in the square through the water mirror. Seeing great holy Sun Yimo wearing a purple and gold priest robe and reading the elegy calmly, the elders all praised him with a smile. The great holy Sun is a talented man, and he will be a pillar of our Tianyin tribe in the future. Yes, since absorbing the soul of that evil creature, the great holy Sun's cultivation has advanced rapidly, and his state of mind has also grown rapidly. I think it won't take long for him to be able to take charge. It won't take long. I think it can be done now. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe sitting in the center of the throne to worship the ancestors and summon the Mirage Immortal, the Tianyin tribe. At the same time, a group of elders in the Lord's Hall far away were watching everything in the square through the water mirror. Seeing great holy Sun Yimo wearing a purple and gold priest robe and reading the elegy calmly, the elders all praised him with a smile. The great holy Sun is a talented man, and he will be a pillar of our Tianyin tribe in the future. Yes, since absorbing the soul of that evil creature, the great holy Sun's cultivation has advanced rapidly, and his state of mind has also grown rapidly. It won't take long for him to be able to take charge. It won't take long. I think it can be done now. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe sitting in the center of the throne to worship the ancestors and summon the Mirage Immortal, the Tianyin tribe. At the same time, a group of elders in the Lord's Hall far away were watching everything in the square through the water mirror. Seeing Great Holy Sun Yi Mo wearing a purple and gold priest robe and reading the elegy calmly, the elders all praised him with a smile. The Great Holy Sun is a talented man, and he will be a pillar of our Tianyin tribe in the future. Yes, since absorbing the soul of that evil creature, the Great Holy Sun's cultivation has advanced rapidly, and his state of mind has also grown rapidly. It won't take long for him to be able to take charge. It won't take long. I think it can be done now. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe sitting in the center of the throne. Chapter 507. Then Su Li saw the handsome young man, who exuded the characteristics of Ling Qinglan, open his hands, and the spiritual fire behind him suddenly rose higher. Although there was no wind, the fire was twisting wildly, as if a huge and ferocious monster was roaring wantonly. At the same time, the cold woman beside the handsome young man, who had been exuding the pneuma of yin shui, took a step forward and murmured. The mysterious pneuma around her kept flying, and gradually turned into a black and purple odd-shaped portal. There was a trace of blood in the portal, as if it was a bloody mouth that had not yet opened. The cold woman's eyes were ruthless. She glanced at the last 3 rows of disciples in the field, and stretched out her slender fingertips. Countless spiritual lights scattered. The next moment, swish, swish, swish. In the square, beams of spiritual lights rose from the futons into the sky, illuminating the faces full of fear. A strange smile appeared on the cold woman's face, and her voice was soft with a strong bewitching power. Come on, throw yourself into the flame of the Mirage Immortal. You will live forever and become a part of the Mirage Immortal. This is the supreme glory. Boom. Su Li suddenly felt a burst of heat around her, and then she saw another pillar of spiritual light rising into the sky. The pale young man looked even paler. His cheeks tightened, and he stood up from the futons like the others. I was chosen? Why? I don't want to be integrated with the old ancestor of the Mirage Immortal. Disgusting. A strong sense of unwillingness burned his internal organs, but his body uncontrollably walked towards the flames. The cold woman's voice was still echoing in his ears, like the voice of a devil. Finally, the first batch of tribal disciples in front of him stepped into the flame. The hot temperature instantly evaporated the tears in his eyes, leaving only the extremely repressed screams and the burning sound in his bones like firewood. RRR, RRR. The spiritual fire was so powerful, and these disciples' cultivation was not high. Only one of them entered it. He was almost annihilated. Su Li stared at the giant door behind the cold woman. In her eyes, she clearly saw that the disciples of the Tianyi tribe were burned to death and turned into a trace of special energy and poured into the door. The purple-black color around the door became thicker and thicker, and a bigger gap appeared in the door. The blood-red liquid seemed to flow out in the next moment, which was extremely evil. Su Li subconsciously touched her ring finger, but she didn't touch the black lotus ring. She curled her lips. Killing your own kind. Such a cold-blooded race should not exist in this world. Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and set you free. The cold voice swept across the square like a light breeze, instantly releasing all the control over the offerings. At this moment, the entire square fell into silence. Even the sacrifices had their eyes wide open, and they'd forgotten to flee. Someone actually dared to make trouble at the sacrificial ceremony. The handsome young man and the cold-looking woman were both shocked and furious. They had not expected such a turn of events, and their expressions instantly darkened. The cold woman waved her hand, and the purple-black door instantly spread, covering the entire square to prevent anyone from escaping. She glanced at the square with her cold and beautiful eyes, and said in a gloomy tone, "Who are you? Come out and die." In many astonished faces, Su Li stood up with a smile and patted the ordinary disciple clothes on her. Her lips didn't move, but her voice was clearly heard by everyone. Only 80% of the young disciples came? Well, it's better than nothing. Before she finished her words, Su Li's figure suddenly disappeared. The cold woman and the handsome young man's pupils shrank suddenly, and a huge crisis of life and death enveloped them. They took out a token and crushed it without saying a word. The altar shone with cyan light, and countless cyan blades darted around. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the disciples in the square were accidentally injured. In the cyan light, the handsome young man looked slightly relaxed, and his face was cold. Father and the elders must have found it. I just need to hold on for a moment, and then I can escape. Puff. Without warning, a pitch-black claw came out from his back. The handsome young man felt a sharp pain in his chest, and then he blacked out. He didn't know anything. Su Li's eyes were indifferent. Countless cyan wind blades hit through her pitch-black body, and couldn't hurt her at all. She held the young man's head in one hand, and a circle of blackness spread rapidly on the edge of the bloody hole in his chest. In the blink of an eye, the handsome young man's body turned black, and then turned into black powder, drifting away. Only a group of unconscious soul light was flickering in the air. 80% of Ling Qinglan's soul is concentrated on this person. Good luck. Su Li smiled slightly, and threw the soul light into the nightmare's mouth unhurriedly. Then she killed the cold woman and got 60% of Yin Shue's soul. After that, Su Li waved her hand to disperse the flying cyan blades. The purple-black door in the square was still running, and it was not affected by the cold woman at all. Sure enough, this door is a treasure of the evil circle. Su Li didn't look at the geniuses of the Tianyi tribe in the square, and stepped towards the purple-black door. Every step she took, black water gushed out under her feet, and the whole square was submerged in the blink of an eye. No matter what methods the disciples and geniuses of the Tianyi tribe used, they couldn't resist the invasion of the black water, and it finally touched their skin. The seemingly cold black water instantly turned into hot fire poison, and the square was turned into a sea of fire, like a hell on earth. What is this? Help me, ooh ah, I am the future of the lineage. I can't die. Why, the pale young man trembled violently, and stared at the scene in front of him blankly. The black water around him seemed to have a spirit, and automatically bypassed him without hurting him. But he was not happy at all. Even if he survived from the demon woman because of what he said, as the only survivor of this disaster, would the clan let him go? Impossible. Su Li leaned against the purple-black door, which was getting brighter and brighter, and looked at the cruel scene in the square calmly. Since some of you, who are not qualified, are destined to be sacrifices, you might as well help me. As for you geniuses who stole Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui, you deserve to die. As soon as she finished speaking, her ink-black hair fluttered without wind. The temperature of the black water flame rose again, and the void was faintly distorted. Thousands of disciples were burned to ashes, and bits of soul and spiritual light gathered and were swallowed by the nightmare. It's almost time. I didn't expect that there would be an unexpected harvest. Su Li saw that the purple-black door had opened a big gap, and a mass of wriggling flesh was trying to squeeze out. Her eyes were bright, and she licked her lips with a strange smile. Are you the Mirage Immortal? You look delicious. The wriggling flesh suddenly stagnated, and then squeezed into the door more crazily. Unfortunately, the purple-black door opened slowly, and it also closed slowly. The black curtain that covered the sky gradually faded. Su Li stopped smiling, and threw the nightmare into the body of the pale young man. The pale young man was stunned for a moment, and then immediately opened a gap in the void to escape. Crash! The thinning black curtain finally turned into fragments in the almost crazy attacks of the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe and the elders. The scene in the square came into view, but it made all of them feel cold. Everyone was dead. 80% of the talented disciples of our Tianyin tribe were all dead in this short time. For a moment, all the elders were dizzy, and the emotions of despair and rage kept surging. It's you, my son. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, who was calm in front of the collapsing mountain, was gasping violently when he said a word at the moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he almost wanted to devour people. Go to hell. Boom. With a shocking explosion, the black air surged behind the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, and the shadow of a giant scorpion appeared. The giant scorpion roared, and its two pincers, which were bigger than the top of a mountain, slapped at Su Li. Su Li grabbed the exposed flesh of the giant door with one hand, and the black color had contaminated a small area. You come at the right time. She turned her head with a smile, and saw that the slender and white right hand suddenly turned into a pitch-black sharp claw, facing the poisonous scorpion's pincers. Although the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was extremely hateful, he immediately calmed down after entering the fighting state. His face was hideous and distorted. At the moment when the two sides were about to touch, his hands turned into afterimages, and he made a series of dazzling restrictive spells. The poisonous scorpion's two pincers waved, and they instantly turned into hundreds of pairs of giant pincers. From top to bottom, they pressed down like a huge awl. Boom! A bright cold light flashed over the top of the mountain, and the whole mountain immediately shook violently. No, the patriarch is angry, and the whole mountain will collapse. Seeing this, the elders immediately flew to 4 directions to consolidate the big tactical matrix of the mountain. If this mountain collapsed into the area where the disciples lived below, there would be countless deaths and injuries. Their Tianyin tribe couldn't afford any more deaths. What about the demon girl? She must be dead. What is the cultivation of the patriarch? The demon girl just took advantage of the loophole of the sacrifice. I hate it. Why does the gate of the Mirage Immortal stop us from going in? If it weren't for the black barrier, our tribe wouldn't be so miserable. Many elders spoke one after another. They all looked sad and indignant, with tears in their eyes. The foundation of their Tianyin tribe for thousands of years was almost destroyed by a young evil demon girl. It's a great shame. It's a great shame. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe stood quietly in the nothingness, listening to the voices coming from around. There was no joy or sadness on his face, but his body became much hunched. The voice and smile of his son in the past kept flashing in his mind. Dad. I want to become stronger, no matter what price I have to pay. Dad. I'm not talented enough, and I don't want to lose your face. No matter what side effects of the soul fusion method, I'm willing to accept it. Dad. I have accepted the soul of Yi Mo perfectly. As long as I digest it, your son will not let you down. I have grown up. Let me preside over the sacrifice this time. With Sister Ning Shue's help, there will be no mistakes. He closed his eyes in pain and regretted very much in his heart. Why did he promise his son to take this path? Retribution is coming. There was a laugh in his ear. Chapter 508. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was stiff all over. Before he had time to dodge, the dark palm had been quietly printed on his back. Boom! The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe shot into the mountain like a cannonball. The mountain that had barely been maintained collapsed in an instant. The elders who maintained the tactical matrix all spat out blood, and their pneuma instantly weakened. Gravel and boulders fell into the residence of the disciples of the Tianyin tribe below like rain, and countless people were killed and injured in an instant. Giggle, Su Li's chuckle echoed in the mountain, and her figure turned into a black electric arc and shot into the mountain. After a while, she flashed back to the original place, with the dying patriarch of the Tianyin tribe in her hand. Is this all the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe can do? It's really disappointing. As Su Li said, she looked calmly at the depths of the mountain range, where 2 pneumas were waking up and coming here. The face of the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was covered with blood. He opened his eyes with difficulty and saw Su Li's hands with sharp nails. He coughed up blood and laughed. Demon, you killed the talent of my tribe. Even if you catch me, you can't leave here alive today. You seem to have misunderstood something. Su Li smiled with her beautiful eyes. The pneuma belonging to the purple-black giant door in her body was like a high explosive, tumbling violently. If it weren't for the suppression of the ghost energy, it would have poured out long ago. The pneuma of the Mirage Immortal. Although the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was seriously injured and dying, he still sensed the pneuma in Su Li's body. His eyes suddenly widened, and his bloody eyeballs almost broke out of his eye sockets. Madman! Do you want to? Su Li grinned, revealing 3 rows of sharp fangs in her mouth. At this moment, 2 shocking roars came from the depths of the Tianyin tribe. That demon destroyed the future of my tribe. Go to hell! Go to hell! 2 shadows, one gray and one white, rushed to the collapsed mountain in an instant, and Su Li smiled even more. No. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe shouted with all his strength. The 2 shadows finally realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. Su Li's smile was full of madness. The purple-black light flashed through her body, and her body expanded 100 times in the blink of an eye. Then, rumble, a huge mushroom cloud rose from the sky of the Tianyin tribe, and the violent vibration spread to the foot of the mountain. The practitioners in Tianyi City looked up at the huge explosion at the same time and were stunned. The Tianyin tribe exploded. In the Jiguang sect, an elder in black clothes rushed into the room with sweat all over his head. He said in horror, "Lord, something big happened in the Tianyin tribe." Xian Jingju, who had been paying attention to the movement, immediately took the note. When he saw the news from the spy in Tianyi City, he was also stunned. What did Su Jiuzhou do? The next day, a piece of shocking news flew to all parts of Qingshui Circle through Qianyik Attic and immediately caused a storm in the cultivation circle. The Tianyin tribe was destroyed. I don't know who did this, but all the elders, sect master, and 2 quasi-emperors are dead. 90% of the disciples are dead, and only a senior quasi-emperor who's about to reach the end of his lifespan is left to take charge of the situation. The veteran junior emperor won't live for hundreds of years. The entire Tianyin tribe is destroyed like this. It is equivalent to the extinction of the tribe. According to the last surviving disciple, a quasi-emperor female cultivator came to seek revenge, and she perished together with the entire clan. Li. Something big happened in Qingshui Circle again. Jiuli region. Hua Yang hurriedly ran to the back mountain. When she saw the door of the adytum was half open, she knew that her old friend had returned. She quickly pushed the stone door open. The light shone into the adytum and shone on Su Li's slightly pale face. Hua Yang was shocked. Are you hurt? Who hurt you? Su Li glanced at Gui Bayan, who was hiding in the dark, shook her head, and said, I didn't pay attention to it. It's just a minor injury. I will recover soon. She didn't lie. The explosion of the evil ghost was indeed a minor injury. It was her unique talent of evil ghost. It wouldn't take long for the evil ghost to be resurrected. At the moment when the evil ghost exploded, her consciousness had returned to her body. Although she lost a little of her divine soul because of her improper operation for the first time, it only took her a few breaths to make up for it. That's good. Hua Yang breathed a sigh of relief and put the latest intelligence of Qianyik Attic on the table. I have been arranging the intelligence network of Jiuli region, but the time is too short to penetrate into other big regions. These intelligence still have to rely on Qianyik Attic. Su Li nodded with a smile. It's already very good. It's not urgent. After I solve Yushu sect, there will be plenty of time to develop. Hua Yang nodded slightly. A trace of worry flashed in her eyes, but it was soon hidden. She stood up. Then you take care of yourself. I will let Zai and others come to see you in 2 days. Su Li nodded and watched Hua Yang take a few steps. Then she hesitated and turned her head, sighing, don't put too much pressure on yourself. At worst, sensing the concern of her friend, Su Li's heart was slightly warmed. It seemed that the monstrous killing she had done in the past 2 days was washed away a little. I know what I'm doing. Don't worry. Hearing that Su Li's tone was gentle and not impatient, Hua Yang smiled and left the adytum. Not long after, she came to the main hall of the sect. Yang Zai and others had been waiting here. Seeing Hua Yang's arrival, everyone immediately greeted her. How is it, Master? Is she back? Yang Zai said. He was shrouded in a strong murderous spirit. In the past 2 months, he had secretly subdued the 25 sects and killed a lot of people. So far, he hadn't completely washed away the bloody smell. His cultivation also made rapid progress in the killing and reached the middle stage of Huashan realm. Dongfang Wuxue also came over. He was in cyan clothes. His cultivation had been restored to Yuanying realm with the help of spiritual power. Under the guidance of Yang Zai, he was about to break through Huashan realm. Lvu rolled up his sleeves and stood aside calmly, but his ears were raised high. His aptitude was the lowest, so his cultivation speed was not as fast as others. However, as the first casual practitioner to turn to Su Li, he would naturally not be excluded from Su Li's side. Hua Yang looked at the three people and felt gratified that Su Li had such subordinates. She did not forget to reply, "She is back indeed. The intelligence of Jolie region has been sent. You don't have to worry too much. Master, you came back at the right time." Yang Zai relaxed his eyebrows and sighed, "I didn't expect Brother Qinglan to be from the Tianyin tribe. If the tribe hadn't been destroyed this time, I would have thought it was the Yi family in the north. Now I think that Brother Qinglan's means are evil, which is indeed in line with the characteristics of the sects in Jolie region. Since the Tianyin tribe has been destroyed, Brother Qinglan doesn't have to worry about being chased down." Dongfang Wuxue nodded with a smile, "Those who do evil are doomed to destruction." Speaking of which, the Tianyin tribe was also one of the holy sects that participated in that year. Now it is reversed and is sought for revenge. What a happy ending. Well, you guys can't stop talking. Hua Yang rolled her eyes. How long has it been since the incident of Ghost Region last time? Another holy sect was destroyed. Qingshui Circle is in troubled times. You should be careful when you go out. Don't fail miserably. Of course, we will. In the adytum of the forbidden area in the back mountain, the lights were flickering. Su Li stared at her shadow, which was growing up from a baby. In another 12 to 14 hours, it would be fully grown. Master! Master! Black Lotus shuddered out of the ring. Looking at the evil ghost that was being reborn, he said with difficulty, "Master's talent, is it? The indestructible body?" Su Li raised her eyebrows, showing a look of interest. "What is the indestructible body? Tell me, and maybe I can know what my talent is." Black Lotus smiled bitterly. The body of evil ghost had inherited memory, but, perhaps because of different clans, Su Li didn't have it. So, she relied on him to explain. In the past, he thought highly of himself and manipulated Su Li with his profound knowledge. But now, after seeing Su Li's terrifying talent, he didn't dare to do that anymore. The indestructible body is the most powerful talent in the inherited talent of evil ghosts. As long as the body is not destroyed, the body of evil ghost can't die at all. But the indestructible body in my memory is far less flexible than that of Master. It has no self-consciousness, can't practice and realize independently, and can't integrate consciousness anytime, anywhere, regardless of distance. The more Black Lotus said, the more he sighed, "Master, your evil ghost is just a humanoid bomb that can be controlled freely. As long as any holy sect is taken advantage of by you, it will suffer heavy losses." Su Li nodded. "This method can be used once or twice. People of holy sects are not fools, and they will take precautions in the future. But it is not a loss to rescue the souls of Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui this time." Black Lotus's eyelids twitched violently. It was not a loss to destroy a holy sect unscathed. It was a big gain. 2 days later, Su Li's shadow was fully grown, and her face was ruddy. The evil ghost reappeared in the adytum. The newly grown evil ghost is still weak, and it needs to replenish the ghost energy, which consumes a lot. If it is not necessary in the future, I still can't easily self-destruct. Su Li adapted to the evil ghost for a while, and her consciousness returned to the body. When she walked out of the adytum, the evil ghost instantly turned into black water and integrated into the shadow. "Master, Master, you are finally back." Yang Zai, Dongfang Wuxue and others greeted her. They looked at Su Li with excitement in their eyes. "Lord Hua is busy with intelligence and has not had time to come." "It doesn't matter." Su Li waved her hand. "You two go to the Su family with me. Lvu, you continue to guard the house. If there is an emergency, send me a message." Lvu heard the words, and a trace of imperceptible loss flashed in his eyes. Finally, he bowed his head and said, "I see." Su Li noticed his mood, but she didn't say anything. She waved her sleeves and disappeared with Yang Zai and Dongfang Wuxue. The spirit boat flew in the air, and it took a while to arrive at the Su family. Su Li leaned lazily on the soft chair, shaking the spiritual wine in her hand. She lowered her eyes and asked casually, "Zai, how about the 25 sects?" Yang Zai suddenly looked refreshed. "Master, in addition to Jindao cult, we have cooperated with Su Daiyin in the past 2 months. We have taken over the last 5 sects of the 25 sects. Our power has expanded 3 times. Su Li nodded with satisfaction. "Good progress. Which sect is next?" Dongfang Wuxue immediately replied, "It is Leiyuan sect. Although Leiyuan sect ranks 12th or 13th, it has been falling apart because of internal strife. We have sent people to infiltrate and secretly look for the spies of holy sects." Su Li stopped holding the wine cup and thought of all the things when she just entered Huajian sect. "Since Leiyuan sect has good potential, this time, I will do it myself." Chapter 509. In the mountains occupied by the head branch of the Su family, there were many pavilions. The disciples walked through them and were busy as usual. Since Su Chunka became the only voice of the Su family, the entire 7 branches of the Su family began to operate according to Su Li's will. New clan rules were promulgated one by one, which revitalized the decadent family. At this moment, in the residence of Su Chunka in the back mountain of the Su family, Su Chunka bowed and guarded beside Su Li. After Su Li waved her hand, he immediately consciously retreated to the door and closed the tactical matrix. The light in the room dimmed a lot. Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui sat on the seats opposite Su Li, and they looked more relieved and relaxed. "As soon as I came back, I received an urgent message from you too." "What's the matter?" Su Li tapped the table with her nails unhurriedly, and her eyes were calm. Ling Qinglan glanced at his sister and breathed a sigh of relief. He said, "You should have read the message from Tianyik Attic." "Yes." Su Li nodded and looked at the two with a faint smile. "The Tianyin tribe is destroyed, and no one will chase you again. Next, you can rest assured to stay in Jiuzhou region and work for me." Ling Qinglan was silent when he heard the words. The past conjectures flashed in his mind, and he didn't know how to say it for a while. Was Su Jiuzhou in front of him the successor of Su Li? After he got in touch with Su Daiyin and felt the reality of her AO sword skills, he became more and more suspicious of his previous thoughts. After all, Su Jiuzhou did not show other substantial abilities except for recognizing him that day, which proved that it was her. Everything was just his wishful thinking. Su Jiuzhou neither denied nor admitted it. Her attitude was weird. Ling Qinglan didn't say it, but Yin Shui, who had been very uneasy on the side, couldn't help but sigh. She finally said, "Su Jiuzhou, it is not a good thing for me and my brother that the Tianyin tribe is destroyed." Su Li's eyes flashed. She suppressed the soul fluctuation in the evil ghost and chuckled, "It seems that you are hiding something from me." Yin Shui glanced at Ling Qinglan, who did not respond. She nodded and continued, "Yes, it is related to your master Su. Mr. Su. After the reincarnation mirror was broken, my brother and I returned to the clan. We were suspected to be the people who took away our souls and were imprisoned for many years." As if recalling some bad memories, Yin Shui's face turned slightly pale. She subconsciously hugged her arms as she softly said, "The clan is filled with heartless people. Even a genius like younger brother will only become a tool at the bottom of the hierarchy once he is deemed to have lost his loyalty." Yin Shui closed her eyes in pain, trying her best not to recall the tragedy of that day. Su Li waited quietly and did not urge him. After a long time, Yin Shui continued, "The Tianyin holy sect's inheritance has a crafty technique called soul splitting. The souls of my younger brother and I were in close contact with the daughter of luck in the reincarnation mirror. It contained a large amount of luck, which was coveted. Soon after we came back from the reincarnation mirror, we were plotted against by the clan. We were imprisoned for hundreds of years and fed with the soul-splitting strange medicine. Finally, our souls were forcibly extracted by the Grand Elder of the clan. We only had consciousness left. We were dying and our bodies were abandoned in the wilderness. Fortunately, my younger brother and I both practiced secret methods in the reincarnation mirror. We barely escaped with our broken bodies. We each possessed 2 dying people and fled back to the Jojo region. Only in the Jojo region, where the holy sect had many means, can we avoid being deduced the precise direction by the clan and continue to live. You know what happened later. Su Li smiled slightly. Later, when you returned to the Su family, Ling Qinglan turned into Uncle Guang and secretly healed you. Yin Shui nodded. On the day our clan was annihilated, my younger brother and I had a vague feeling that our souls hadn't dissipated. Instead, they had been collected by someone with ulterior motives. Our connection with our souls hadn't been completely severed. If that person had used our souls to do something, it was very likely that we would have died even sooner. Ling Qinglan didn't mean to speak until Yin Shui finished. Since his soul and consciousness were separated, his death was doomed. The only difference was whether he would die earlier or later. Even if he used the secret method to re-practice, he still couldn't cut off the connection with the original soul. If his soul died, his consciousness would also dissipate. Originally, when the first Holy Sun absorbed his soul, it would take him hundreds of years to digest it. Then he could live for another hundreds of years. But now his soul fell into the hands of others, and the date of his death was not fixed. Su Li nodded and then said with a smile, "So? Chulu, what do you mean by saying so much?" Yin Shui was stunned and looked at Ling Qinglan with uncertainty in her eyes. Chulu was the name she used in the reincarnation mirror. Seeing that she didn't speak, Su Li turned her head and still smiled. "Am I wrong? Chulu, I have seen the ruthlessness of your Yin family. Now do you still want to continue your surname Yin, or do you want to follow the surname of the Ling family? Let me say this upfront, I don't have a good impression of the Ling family." Facing the sharp gaze, Yin Shui couldn't help but avoid his eyes and whispered, "Does it make sense? My brother and I are both going to die. What's the difference whether we change our names or not?" "Of course, there is a difference." Su Li smiled and stretched out her hands to open her palms. 2 groups of souls flashing with colorful light rose slowly. If Su Li didn't control them, the 2 groups of souls would disappear into their heads in an instant. This is... Yin Shui, no. Chulu stared at the 2 groups of souls in front of her with her eyes wide open. Her lips trembled uncontrollably. "This is mine and Mo's." Although Ling Qinglan was not as miserable as Yin Shui, his eyes also lit up with unprecedented light. If he could see no hope and couldn't struggle, who would be willing to die? "Why are they in your hands?" Ling Qinglan finally spoke. His voice was a little hoarse because he suppressed his emotions. Su Li put away the 2 groups of souls, shook her head and chuckled. "I remember I said that I hate the holy sects. The Tianyin tribe can only be regarded as interest." Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui were suddenly shocked. They were so angry that they couldn't speak for a long time. Ling Qinglan opened his mouth, only feeling that his heart was filled with countless confusion and shock, and he didn't know what to ask for a while. Su Li got up and left directly, leaving the 2 statues of a man and a woman. "Take good care of your bodies. I will change your souls in a few days. Whether I am the successor of that person or not, as long as you accompany me to destroy the holy sects, your identity is not so important." Su Li wore the costume of the Naiman branch disciple of Leiyuan's sect and walked on the stone road in the mountains. There were 5 forces in the hands of the Ni sect. The integrated power was no less than any of the top 10 sects. "I haven't seen Fan Zisang for a long time. I can take the opportunity to meet him." Su Li narrowed her eyes. If she hadn't entered the secret realm of shattered spirits with Fan Zisang's help, she would have to spend a lot of time practicing on the Chuangxing path and delay the progress of revenge. "I heard from Hua Yang that Fan Zisang was amazing after he entered the sect. Now he has reached the middle stage of Yuanying realm and ranks 5th among the inherited disciples. I have smelled a familiar smell on him. He must have been secretly helped by someone." When she was thinking, she suddenly felt someone push her back. "Junior sister apprentice, why are you still in a daze? If you don't hurry up, you will miss the fun." Su Li looked back and saw a young man who looked quite simple and honest. She asked with interest, "What fun?" The young man was stunned for a moment, and then his face changed. "Oh, no. It's too late. Then he ignored Su Li and hurried up the mountain. Su Li raised her eyebrows and followed him unhurriedly. At the same time, the carrier rune in her hand lit up, and Yang Zai's voice came. Master, today is the day of the Thunder Pool Major Competition of Lei Yuan sect. It is also a means to test the strength of inherited disciples. However, in the sensitive period when the two deputy lords are fighting for real power, I am afraid that the Thunder Pool Major Competition is very complicated. Master, your senior fellow apprentice is also involved. The voice in the carrier rune gradually faded. Su Li's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. Lei Yuan sect, by the Thunder Pool in the back mountain. The Thunder Pool, which used to be cold, was extremely noisy and overcrowded at this time. It was not until the elders of the sect came out to maintain order that the Thunder Pool was empty. Only 6 inherited disciples were still standing by the Thunder Pool. The atmosphere was stiff. Fan Zisang clenched the sword in his hand and looked serious. But when he saw the white-haired young man standing closest to the Thunder Pool, his heart sank. Boy, I have said that you shouldn't choose a side in this battle for the position of Deputy Lord. The familiar voice of the old man in the jade token came to his ears. Fan Zisang's eyes were fierce. He took a deep breath and responded with thought, practitioners fight against nature. If I don't even have the thought of fighting, my cultivation will be in vain. Besides, I have climbed to the position of inherited disciple. Even if I don't choose, someone will force me to choose. This time, I'm just unlucky. He closed his eyes for a moment, and suddenly opened them again. He clenched the sword in his hand more tightly. Now, I can only fight. If I lose, I will admit my defeat. At this point, Li Yin in the jade token could not say anything more. He just sighed deeply. He had decided in his heart that if this boy really became a victim in the battle, he would let him escape even if he exhausted his soul and fell into a deep sleep. After getting along with Fan Zisang for hundreds of years, he had long regarded Fan Zisang as his own disciple. A teacher for a day was a father for a lifetime. In the past, Fan Zisang bought elixirs for him to maintain the consumption of his soul. Now it was time for him to fulfill his responsibility as a father. It's time. Let's go to the Thunder Pool. According to the agreement between the two sides, those who persist to the end will be qualified to enter the Mount Feng Lei. On the stone platform above the lightning pool, after the great elder finished speaking, he opened his eyes and looked at the void behind the two sides. After that, he closed his eyes again. The lord of the sect was about to abdicate, so he didn't care much about it. The two sides were fighting fiercely, but it would not affect his power. Therefore, even if both sides offered him something that tempted him, he finally accepted it and chose to be neutral. In the end, it depended on which one of these little guys could help his descendant win the right to enter the Mount Feng Lei. The Mount Feng Lei was just a secluded place of practice in the Lei Yuan sect. It was nothing, but its meaning was different. Only the lord of each generation was qualified to enter the Mount Feng Lei to practice. After the Thunder Pool Major Competition, whoever entered the Mount Feng Lei would be the lord of the sect. Chapter 510. Outside the Thunder Pool, there was a hubbub of noise from the crowd of disciples. Nobody noticed that another slender figure had squeezed to the front of the crowd. Seeing Fan Zisang standing beside the Thunder Pool, Su Li smiled faintly. Fan Zisang's pneuma was extraordinary and his temperament had changed. I haven't seen him for a long time. My senior fellow apprentice seems to have developed well. She smiled and inadvertently glanced at the void behind the two parties in the field. She opened her lips slightly. Haven't you found the spy of the holy sects? Yang Zai's voice came quickly. The spy of the holy sects of Lei Yuan sect is extremely secretive and has not contacted with the spies of other holy sects. It is extremely difficult to find him in a short time. Su Li looked at Fan Zisang and smiled slightly. Forget it. I have another way. You can leave now. Don't alarm Lei Yuan sect. Yes, when the pneumas of Yang Zai and others faded away, Su Li watched the playful fight with great interest. Whoosh! The hawk-nosed young man's eyes were cold. He waved his hands, and the flying swords were divided into 64 swords, which penetrated into the thunder pool. For a moment, the lightning flashed, and the violent breath shrouded the stone platform. Junior fellow apprentice Yu Wang, look at my 64 thunder sword. He shouted coldly, and changed the gesture again. The 64 flying swords seemed to be alive, and each stabbed at the vital parts of Wang Yu Wang. It was impossible to hold back in the fight for orthodoxy. The hawk-nosed young man used his killing move. Clang, clang, clang. Wang Yu Wang's expression changed again and again. The flying swords in his hands continued to rotate and danced into a round shield. The huge force hit the round shield, which made him retreat constantly. Soon, he retreated to the edge and was on the verge of collapse. Lin Xiqing, you're going too far. He shouted loudly and emptied his hand. Another oddly shaped magical treasure was brought out and submerged in the lightning pool. Boom! A thunder snake swam out of the thunder pool and bit Lin Xiqing with its big mouth. Lin Xiqing laughed and fought with it crazily, just in time. It happens to verify my secret skill of body refining. Under the stone platform, Fan Zisang looked tense and worried. Senior sister apprentice, senior fellow apprentice Wang is in a bad situation. Standing in front of Fan Zisang, the heroic woman's eyes were sharp. She stared at the white-hot battle in the field and sighed softly. Her voice came into Fan Zisang's ears. Wang Xiqing, the third successor disciple, has already exerted 120% of his strength. I didn't expect that Lin Xiqing had been hiding his strength. He is not the fourth successor disciple at all. Now he has revealed his trump card. Even I dare not take it easily. We lost. Fan Zisang's emotions flowed inexplicably. Since he got rid of Wang Yu's control, he joined the Leiyuan sect. With the help of Li Yin, he quickly distinguished himself and was defeated by immortal Kai Ying, the deputy lord of the sect. His luck was pretty good this time. Although his master's temperament was cold, he was very affectionate and took good care of his disciples. His senior sisters and brothers were also very good to him. Senior sister, Fan Zisang wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He wanted to say that he had also hidden a lot of strength. Although it was a little worse than that person, it was not much worse. But would that work? At present, they had lost one game. In the remaining 2 games, neither he nor his senior sister could win against that person. Fan Zisang looked at the side face of his senior sister apprentice. Although she didn't show disappointment, he could feel her strong unwillingness. You don't have to worry. Even if our master loses, we will be excluded from the sect at most. The heroic woman transmitted the sound. She turned her head and smiled slightly. There are countless big regions in Qingshui Circle. I don't believe that there is no place for us. Okay. Fan Zisang nodded hard and responded, but he felt bitter in his heart. He knew that his senior sister apprentice was just comforting him. Without the protection of the sect, how could the Leiyuan sect let them leave Jiuzhou region alive? At that time, there would be a bloody battle. He suddenly looked up at the indifferent white-haired man on the opposite side. The white-haired man sensed Fan Zisang's gaze, turned his head and showed a faint smile. An obscure pressure came over. Fan Zisang's face changed slightly. He snorted coldly and waved his hand to easily disperse the man's deterrence. The white-haired man was slightly stunned. He immediately shook his head with a smile and looked back at the stone platform. The heroic woman who wanted to protect her junior fellow apprentice was surprised when she saw this scene. Junior fellow apprentice, you? Fan Zisang smiled and said, regardless of the objection of the jade token, senior sister apprentice, how about leaving the first inherited disciple to me? The heroic woman was stunned. She looked at the junior fellow apprentice who had just joined the sect for a few years but was already very familiar with her. She felt strange for a moment. Senior sister apprentice, believe me this time. If I can defeat him, all the difficulties can be easily solved. Fan Zisang made a decision in his heart. He no longer hesitated and persuaded her again. The heroic woman's heartbeat accelerated slightly, and her beautiful eyes widened. Are you really sure? She had just seen that the skill of her junior fellow apprentice was extremely inconsistent with the strength he showed. I can't guarantee it. Fan Zisong smiled bitterly, but the heroic woman smiled and patted him on the shoulder. I'm no match for him. Since you want to have a try, go there. Master is behind us, and we don't have to worry about our safety. Don't feel too much pressure this time. Just take it as a chance to verify your cultivation, understand? Hearing the senior sister apprentice's exhortation, Fan Zisong felt warm in his heart. He nodded gently, but he was more determined to use that skill. Bastard! Do you still recognize me as your master? If you use that skill in front of others, it will definitely cause countless troubles, and no one can protect you. Fan Zisong took a deep breath, calmed down, and responded in his consciousness, Senior Li, if I can't win the orthodoxy of Leiyuan's sect, I will face endless pursuit. I don't know whether I can survive or not. Is there any difference between using it or not? The jade token was speechless for a while. After a long time, a sigh came out, and there was no response. Puff! The thunder snake's head was cut by countless flying swords, and it collapsed. Wang Yowang's face suddenly turned pale. He spat blood from his mouth and flew down the stone platform. The heroic woman hurriedly stepped forward to catch her junior fellow apprentice who fell down, and said sternly, "We admit defeat." After that, Lin Xiqing, who was ready to rush down the stage, stopped and turned to leave the stage unwillingly. The task given to him by his senior fellow apprentice was to kill Wang Yuwang completely. He didn't expect that Wang Yuwang's strength was ordinary, but his life-saving ability was quite good, so he escaped. In the first round, the Fengguang lineage wins. The first elder announced the result expressionlessly, and looked at Fan Zisong with a trace of pity in his eyes. But it was just a trace. Every time the lord of the sect changed, there was always a bloody purge. He had lived for more than 3,000 years, and such a scene had been common to him, so he didn't feel emotional. Today, the Zhongjin lineage is doomed to be eliminated. He thought in his heart, looked at the Fengguang lineage, and said loudly, in the second round, the white-haired man waved his hand, and the short young man standing beside him immediately stepped on the stone platform. He stared at Fan Zisong and said aggressively, "Ding Fan, the fifth inherited disciple of the Fengguang lineage, please give me some advice." Before he finished his words, he saw the heroic woman beside Fan Zisong suddenly jump onto the stage with a heavy sword in her hand in front of her. The sword was surrounded by silver light, exuding a breathtaking killing intent, and her eyes were shining. "I'll fight with you." Ding Fan was stunned instantly. What was this? Wu Lin, the second inherited disciple, could beat 10 of him with one hand. Whoosh! Seeing Wu Lin's hands making a gesture, and the heavy flying sword made a loud sound, Ding Fan was shocked. He didn't care about his face anymore and shouted, "I give up! I give up!" Ha 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 ha! There was a burst of laughter among the onlookers. Although it was a rational move for Ding Fan to give up, how could it not make people laugh when they saw the superior inherited disciple in such a mess? Ding Fan returned to the white-haired man, and his face had already turned red. As a genius of the sect, when had he been so humiliated? Well, since the Zhongjin lineage doesn't forget to humiliate us before its death, I don't need to be merciful. The white-haired man stood up, and his calm voice came into Ding Fan's ears. Ding Fan was suddenly refreshed, and got rid of the distracting thoughts. He looked at the back of the white-haired man slowly walking to the stone platform with admiration in his eyes. Coming. Fan Zisong took a deep breath, and was about to go forward, when he suddenly heard a sigh. "Don't force yourself. I don't want to lose any disciple." Fan Zisong felt sad, but he completely calmed down. He walked to the stone platform and stared at the smiling white-haired man. "I'll be your opponent." "Heh!" Su Li looked at the white-haired man in the platform, and suddenly made a slight sound. This person has the pneuma of the divine thunder of the 5 elements, but it seems to be the same, with a trace of falsehood. That is the fake divine thunder. If I am right, it is the white thunder of the fake divine thunder. This person can get the mark of the white thunder, so he has a good talent in the thunder circle. Black Lotus's voice came at the right time, The Leyuan sect can breed the mark of the White Thunder. Maybe it can further evolve your divine thunder of earth. This trip is worthwhile. Su Li nodded gently. After she repeatedly violated the test of thunder, the divine thunder of earth in her body also bred a trace of the pneuma of the divine thunder of gold. But because the energy of the thunder was not enough, it was not mature enough. While she was thinking, the fight had begun on the platform, which caused many disciples to exclaim. Fan Zisang, the sixth inherited disciple, can actually survive dozens of moves from the first senior fellow apprentice without showing any sign of defeat. Even the second inherited disciple is no better than him, right? No wonder the Zhongjin branch temporarily changed disciples before. It turns out that Fan Zisang is the trump card of their branch. However, the first senior fellow apprentice is the favored one who got the mark of the ancestral thunder. Even if Fan Zisang's performance is extraordinary, I am afraid that he is no match for the first senior fellow apprentice. Swish. Fan Zisang's body movement was strange. He teleported to another place, and a thunder hole suddenly appeared where he was. Countless white thunderbolts spread along the stone cracks, and gravel splashed. If the stones beside the thunder pool hadn't been tempered by thunderbolts all year round, they would have been completely destroyed. Fan Zisang controlled the heavy sword to block in front of him. He gasped violently, trying to ease half of his paralyzed body. Compared with ordinary thunderbolts, the paralysis of the ancestral thunder is too strong. My Shenlei sword can't block it at all. Give up. You are no match for me. In the white thunderbolts, the white-haired man walked over, like a son of God bathed in the thunder. You have been in the sect for only 1 year, but your cultivation has made rapid progress. You have reached Yuanying realm. You are a good seedling. Why don't you turn to the light and join my Fengguang branch? Fan Zisang's eyes became sharp. No way. The white-haired man stopped smiling, and his voice was still indifferent. In this case, I can't let you live. Chapter 5:11. Crack, crack, crack. The white-haired man took a step forward, and the white cracks under his feet instantly spread to Fan Zisang like a spider web. A white dragon phantom appeared faintly. Seeing the white dragon phantom, the first elder couldn't help but show off. Immediately, he looked at the white-haired man with more appreciation in his eyes. This boy is so calm that he doesn't look like a young man. Now he meets Fan Zisang and shows off. Haha, he is a child after all. Fan Zisang is unlucky to meet him at the same age. The ground shook violently, and it was almost impossible to stand, as if a monster was rampaging. Fan Zisang's eyes shrank, and he jumped into the nothingness without saying a word. When he was about to resist, he saw a weird smile on the white-haired man's face. Oh no! He shouted secretly. Before he had time to react, countless white thunderbolts fell from the sky without warning and completely drowned him. Junior fellow apprentice. The heroic-looking woman was shocked. She was about to rush to the platform, but she was suppressed by the first elder. First elder, you. The heroic-looking woman showed hatred in her eyes, while the first elder looked indifferent. He made up his mind to kill Fan Zisang for the white-haired man, so he naturally couldn't let the heroic-looking woman stop him. Stop! A cold shout came from the nothingness. The grudge between you and me should not affect my disciple. Let Zisang go, and I will give you the position of Lord. Haha, the position of Lord is mine. How can you give it to me? You. The two breaths in the dark were at loggerheads. When they were about to fight, they suddenly heard a loud bang on the stone platform, and then a bloody figure broke free from it. I'm not dead. Fan Zisang was stunned. He was accidentally drowned by the white thunderbolts just now. He was paralyzed and couldn't move at all. He couldn't even use his trump card. How could he suddenly come out? You actually escaped from my cage. The white-haired man's smile faded, and he looked a little surprised and doubtful. Even he couldn't get rid of this move. How could Fan Zisang? Well, in this case, I'll make another move. The white-haired man looked a little cold. In order to avoid trouble, he quickly condensed a huge thunder ball on his fingertips and threw it at Fan Zisang's face in an instant. Fan Zisang's face was evil, and a trace of evil suddenly rose in his eyes. Just as the evil was about to pour out along the tendons and vessels of his arms, Su Li, who was standing in the crowd, curled her lips slightly and flicked her fingers. A trace of undetectable electric arc poured into Fan Zisang's body. Crackle. Fan Zisang trembled all over. He only felt an inexplicable numbness rising from his limbs and bones, which abruptly interrupted his evil practice. At the same time, the white thunder ball seemed to meet its natural enemy. It annihilated itself before it completely touched Fan Zisang. What? Everyone was shocked. The white-haired man's face changed slightly. When he was about to cast another spell, Fan Zisang, who was trembling all over, suddenly stretched out a hand. A weak golden thunderbolt shot out from his fingertips. Kai. The white-haired man's body stiffened. He lowered his head and saw a large patch of charred skin on his chest. His face was filled with unwillingness and confusion. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. His vision went black and he collapsed on the stone platform. A gust of cold wind blew. Everyone shuddered and revealed a dazed expression. Just now. What happened? Fan Zisang was even more confused. He didn't understand how he defeated the opponent from beginning to end. First Elder coughed dryly. Looking at the two deputy lords who had shown themselves, he didn't know where to start for a while. According to the situation just now, the Fengguang branch was sure to win the major competition. How could the Zhongjian branch win in a twinkling of an eye? Thinking of this, First Elder's face suddenly darkened. In order to make friends with the first inherited disciple, he had completely offended the Zhongjian branch. First Elder, it's time to announce the result. The cold-looking man in a Taoist robe came out. Although he had many doubts about his little apprentice, it didn't prevent him from being happy. Deputy Lord Mi Xin, this. First Elder hesitated and deliberately slowed down his speech. As expected, he heard another cold voice. Wait. Mi Xin, your apprentice didn't use the orthodox magic arts of our Leiyuan sect. This competition doesn't count. Hearing such shameless words, the man in a Taoist robe laughed instead of being angry. Caillou, I didn't say anything when you taught your apprentice the forbidden white thunder skill in private. Now my apprentice just used the thunder skill that you have never seen, but you regarded it as an evil method. You are in charge of the Leiyuan sect. You. Immortal Caillou's face was ferocious for a moment, and then became gloomy again. He turned around and picked up the white-haired man on the ground, and left without saying a word. Seeing this, First Elder knew that Caillou was in the wrong, so he didn't argue with him anymore. At the moment, he couldn't be biased anymore, so he smiled cheekily and said, Congratulations, Immortal Mi Xin. The qualification to enter the Mount Feng Lei belongs to your apprentice. Mi Xin glanced at him lightly, and also left with Fan Zisang, who was wounded all over, without saying a word. Seeing this, First Elder was not annoyed. He waved his sleeves and left. The crowd gradually dispersed. Su Li looked thoughtfully at the direction where Mi Xin left. After thinking for a moment, she also turned around and left. As the deputy lord of Leiyuan sect, Mi Xin's mountain peak had one of the nodes of the large tactical matrix with the densest nimbus in the Leiyuan sect. At this moment, Fan Zisang no longer trembled, and the blood on his body was cleaned up. But black mud was discharged from his body from time to time. Seeing that his apprentice's injury was stable, Mi Xin withdrew his hand and frowned. Someone injected a strange kind of energy into you. It not only helped you defeat Gui Beizi, but also helped you wash your tendons and marrow and improve your root bone. Zisang, how did you feel at that time? Fan Zisang omitted the evil method and answered honestly, I don't know. I just felt that when the thunderball came, I was about to avoid it. Suddenly, I was numb all over, and every muscle was trembling. I couldn't control myself at all. Mi Xin raised his eyebrows slightly, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Is it possible that a senior helped you secretly? Fan Zisang was also very strange. He asked Senior Li in the jade token, but only got a supercilious look. Even if I squeeze out my soul, I can't get a trace of that level of power. Maybe you have a good relationship with a senior. It's really good luck. Shin frowned at his apprentice and showed a rare faint smile. Since you can't figure it out, don't think about it anymore. Have a good rest and prepare for the trip to Mount Fenglei 3 days later. That place is very dangerous. It's hard for you to protect yourself with your cultivation. I'll go with you. Yes, Master. Fan Zisong felt warm in his heart and nodded. Then he worried, will Caillou? Shin shook his head and said softly, if he still wants to continue to compete with me for the position of Lord of the Sect, he won't mess around. You can rest assured. Fan Zisong nodded. After sending his master away, he immediately began to heal himself. 3 days passed in a flash. During this period, perhaps because of the master's order, senior sister apprentice Wu Lin and senior fellow apprentice Yu Wang didn't appear. Fan Zisong went through all the people and things he met in his memory. From beginning to end, he didn't find that he had a good relationship with any senior. However, Li Yin in the Jade Token showed surprise and doubt from time to time. He seemed to have guessed something, but he didn't tell Fan Zisong. On the morning of the 4th day, Immortal Shin came as promised and entered the secret place of Lei Yuan's sect with Fan Zisong. They rushed all the way and didn't find that the shape of Fan Zisong's shadow changed for a moment and then returned to the original shape. After a while, they came to a mountain rock engraved with the character Thunder. Mount Fenglei is the real capital of Lei Yuan sect's prosperity. This opportunity is hard to come by. You should cherish it. Seeing that the character Thunder was dim, Shin told Fan Zisong the origin of Mount Fenglei before it was opened. It's said that during the war in ancient times, countless ancestors' thunders fell into the mountain forest. Instead of being destroyed, the mountain forest was contaminated with the characteristics of many thunder spots. The 5 elements evolved many anomalies, and it became the holy land of thunder practice for later generations. Fan Zisong couldn't help but wonder, is that mountain forest Mount Fenglei? Shin couldn't help laughing and shook his head, of course not. That mountain forest is now controlled by the holy sect of Fenglei sect. How can our Lei Yuan sect occupy it? Now the Mount Fenglei of our Lei Yuan sect is just derived from a trace of thunder brought from there by the founder, and its power is much worse. But you don't have to be too disappointed. Shin saw the disappointment in Fan Zisong's eyes and said, our Lei Yuan sect has been founded for thousands of years, but no one has been recognized by the ancestors' thunder. If you can really get the mark of the ancestors' thunder, you will be much more powerful than Gui Lazy. You can kill him with one hand. Fan Zisong's eyes brightened. Li Yin in the Jade Token couldn't help curling his lips and transmitting the sound, it's just a seedling of the divine thunder of the 5 elements. It has been cultivated for thousands of years, but it's only half dead. It eats a lot of spirits. Even if you get it, you can't afford to raise it. Your master has some savings, so it's possible. You'd better practice Chiyu Shengong and don't do those useless things. But at this moment, the character Thunder on the mountain rock shone, and the gate on the stone wall opened slowly. Well, it's time. Let's go in. Shin patted Fan Zisong on the shoulder, and they disappeared in the gate together. After the stone gate was closed, the character Thunder immediately dimmed. The void was silent for a while, and 2 figures flashed. They were Taoist Caillou and his disciple, Gui Lazy. Looking at the character Thunder that had dimmed, Taoist Caillou struggled, and he looked at Gui Lazy with a trace of respect. You really can. Gui Lazy's face was pale. Obviously, he had not recovered from his injury. He changed his previous gentle and elegant temperament and said impatiently and gloomily, my biological father is the first elder of Ymen branch of the Fenglei sect. He has great power. It's not difficult for him to let you enter the sect. I don't want to expose myself this time. But Shin and his disciple bully me too much. A trace of joy flashed in Caillou's eyes. A purple stone flashing with thunder appeared in his palm. I got this thunder stone by accident. It's enough to replenish the energy of the stone gate. Let's go in now. Okay. Let's kill Fan Zisong and his disciple and leave directly. Gui Lazy licked his lips. His tone was evil, and a deep greed flashed in his eyes. Although the pneuma was very faint, How could he not know what it was, as he came from the Fonglei sect? Ancestral thunder. Fan Zisang actually has ancestral thunder. If I can get it, I'm likely to be promoted directly to the core, not to be a disciple of Ymen branch after returning to the Holy Sect. At that time, the crime of leaving his post without permission is nothing. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.